Oh, I just want to barf on myself. And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, July 26th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by Boom Fantasy. And we're here to talk about another 5-game slate. You got 5 on the early. You're getting 5 on the main. Should be a good time. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are below our bodies. If you follow one of us on Twitter, well, actually, if you would have followed either one of us on Twitter, you would have seen the same tweet. Congrats to Adam yesterday for picking up the big dub. I don't like saying that.
Thanks. It feels good to not be the one congratulating you for once.
No, it doesn't. I definitely prefer it the other way. I actually thought I was going to I thought you were going to ship the early. And then for a moment, I was just like, oh, I might ship the early if this breaks correctly. It didn't break correctly. I finished 7th. 7 top ones, though, so that's a real kick in the dinger. Yeah. With a Carlos Correa 0. That's not the one I wanted.
No. Yeah, he was.
Yeah, I mean, 42 from Ramirez is an insane day.
Yeah, I came in 19th with Correa. I had.
No, I got 2 of them ahead of you then. So all your good luck is gone.
Was in 12.
Ah, shit. Okay.
I had 6 in the top 100.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Me too.
But yeah, I was good for a while. Like I had 2 different outs to win, and they were both up by like double-digit points.
I opened up the app, and you were in 1st and 2nd, and I was like, "Motherfucker!"
Yeah, I was also, I think, at that point in like 11th and 16th or something.
Oh yeah. You had a bunch, and like I had everything, but it was in like 15th, 18th, 22nd, 24th, and I was like, if this idiot ships 1st and 2nd right now, I am going to be an unhappy camper. And then I saw your message where you were just like, the Marlins going crazy would be great. And I was like, it certainly wouldn't. I don't need this. I don't need this at all. But now we have another 5-gamer.
Peralta was my highest owned pitcher, but he just wasn't in my best lineup. So like I'm sitting there like, oh, cool. I have a bunch of lineups doing better as he strikes out 13 dudes, but this is awful for me.
Yeah, I had like 77% or something. So that obviously was helpful. And I was 2x on Sandy, but I didn't realize how much Eflin I had.
Yeah.
He's not like a guy that I normally get. Like I can't picture having big stands on him or anything. So I saw what was happening after your Marlins thing. I was driving back to my house. I was looking at it and I was just like, wow, like I'm probably light on Eflin. Like this is probably working out really well for me. And I opened it up and I have like 40% Eflin. I was like, it's not working out well at all. 5 games to talk about. Where do you stand on 5-gamers?
So I think I like it. I think it's pretty interesting. Like you still have the game theory component. I actually talked about this a lot in the Sims video I put on Twitter earlier and on YouTube. Because this is a slate that's great for it. And it was very evident even in the Sims tool. So you get a lot of strategy that I think you lose on 10-game, 12-game slates. I like 10 and 12-game slates because you can kind of just like play whatever teams you want to play. But on 5-gamers, I think you do get more strategy, but it's not a 2 or a 3-gamer where it's like, great, every player is 35% owned. So
yeah,
I like them. You know, I prefer still like that 8 to 12 range, but
yeah, prepping this morning or this, early afternoon, whatever, I was looking through it and like I saw my exposures and I saw my individual player exposures. I was like, oh, that's like the kind of best balance. You take a few big stands, but it's not like it doesn't have to be a monstrous stand, but like you're heavier than you normally are, but you're still getting like pieces of most things. I enjoyed the balance.
Yeah, and that's how my slate was too. Like typically on these larger slates, I'm getting around the field on most teams or players. On the early slate, I had tons of Cleveland, like well over the field, but just like across the board faded Washington basically. Much bigger stands than normal. And like an interesting thing kind of, leading into this slate, the big takeaway for me from the Sims video earlier, in the top like 150 Sim lineups, Lance Lynn was my highest owned player. The Cubs were my highest owned stack, obviously not together, but it's just, situations like that where on larger slates, you're just not going to get that.
Well, we got enough to talk about to fill the next hour. We've got MLB Live Before Lock coming up next, although I'm going to say that again in 15 minutes when I get to that portion of the show. But are you ready to get it started?
Yep.
I ran a crunch before we started. I'm running my sim now, so I'll have some exposure shortly. But we're going to kick it off in New York. Doesn't I mean, it's weird how different Yankee Stadium and Citi Field, which once again, I don't enjoy saying Citi Field. I called it Shea yesterday on the Deeper Dive. I couldn't remember that it was Citi Field. Such different parks. 4.6 run. I don't think so. I think it's always been Citi Field.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember if at some point it was just like new Shea.
Do you know what Shea is?
I was just thinking that. I assume it's a name, but
yeah. Because I was just gonna say, like, I hate that it's not Shea. Because I said yesterday, it should just always be Shea to me. But if Shea is just like a pharmaceutical company or something, then I don't feel the same way. If that's a person.
Shea Stadium, formerly known as William A. Shea Municipal Stadium. So it's a person.
Okay. Yeah, I generally like that.
In honor of William Shea, an American lawyer and a named partner of the prominent law firm of Shea and Gould.
Okay. Like when everybody was losing their mind for, the Lakers and the Clippers don't play in Staples Center anymore. It's so dumb. It's like, it's Staples. Like, What are we're attached to that? That's not the one.
Well, that was a weird one because like it had been that for so long that it was almost like in my head, I differentiated Staples, the company, from like Staples Center. Even though obviously it's just the company.
Like I think the crypto, name and stuff is dumb. It's not like I was advocating for either side of it, but I'm not going to hitch my wagon to like an office supplies company name.
Yeah, that's like if like the Orioles were eventually to change Oriole Park at Camden Yards to some corporate sponsor, like it would suck because like that's the name of the stadium. It's whatever. But like if the original name were, Staples Center, like I don't care if it changed from Staples to Exxon or something. Like
right. Yeah, that doesn't. They both don't give a shit about your team.
I mean, like Raven Stadium, PSI Net to M&T Bank. Like, I don't care which one it is.
Yeah. Now, there are situations where if it's local, like, is Baltimore Domino Sugar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, that would be cool. The same way that, like, Pittsburgh had Heinz Field and then ruined it.
Right.
Like, if it's going to be a company sponsor, it's got to be, like, the heart and soul of the town. And I don't get the sense that the people of LA have a hankering for Staples. Most people in LA probably not going there. All right, let's do this shit. I killed 15 minutes or whatever I needed to for today. Yankees and Mets. Carlos Rodon going for the Yankees. Didn't go well the last time I had him. Jose Quintana going for the Mets. Rodon is 9K. Quintana is 5,700. Rodon is 33% owned. Quintana is 6. Let's start with Rodon. 9K. 33% owned against the Mets, however. How does he stack up to you? I feel like he's like properly owned because you don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah, so kind of the overarching theme of pitching today, I think, is that there's at least something wrong, a big question mark at least with every single pitcher. Strider's got a tough matchup. Valdez has a tough matchup. Rodon, one, has a relatively tough matchup, and two, we don't know what he is. He was injured. He's in his fourth start of the year. Now, I think it's more likely that he is perfectly fine than that he's like a bad pitcher now. For one, he was very good last year before the injury. But for two, his velocity across the board is in line with what it was last year. Two of his three starts, the two that he really struggled in, his first start, he didn't get a lot of strikeouts, but he was fine as far as run prevention goes. His two most recent starts were in Coors Field and in Anaheim, two very, very tough parks to pitch in. He didn't pitch well, but I'm still at this point assuming that Carlos Rodon is healthy, Carlos Rodon is fine, and he's just had a couple of bad starts, and you're getting a discount too. This isn't like you're getting a $10,500 Carlos Rodon because he's been really good his whole career. You're getting a 9K on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel Carlos Rodon, where at least some of your concerns are mitigated by that price tag because you're getting him at cheaper salary. Now, the ownership scares me because you certainly are still talking about a very volatile pitcher, given that we don't know for sure what he is. Like, it's one of those, people say like in best ball, what players would you most want? Pick one player you'd most want to know how they perform this season that would like improve your drafting. I would love to know what Carlos Rodon's overall stat line looks like a month and a half from now to know how to approach him right now. Is he still pitching a month and a half from now? Is he still
I was going to say, is he active?
Right, exactly. But for right now, with the information we have, the assumption should still be that he's more likely than not to be a very good pitcher that has just had a couple of bad starts. He threw 87 and 88 pitches his last two times out, so you shouldn't have big workload concerns. It's a tough park to pitch in. It's a tough matchup. There are questions about what he is at this point, and that is scary when you're talking about somebody getting 33% ownership. But then you get to the other part of this, which is the part that we talk about a lot when you'll have people in chat just saying, "Oh, you can't play Rodon." Then you have to follow that up with which guy you're going to play more of and explain why Carlos Rodon's concerns are significantly worse than the concerns regarding those pitchers, because you don't have that ace facing Oakland in Oakland pitcher on this slate. So
no, you do not.
The ownership on Rodon, long story short, I think looks like it's pretty much where it should be.
I just needed to go a little bit better than that 2-dinger, 3 strikeout performance the last time out, where I think I had like 75% of him.
Yeah,
that said,
played a lot.
He's in like half my lineups right now. I hate it. Like, if it were in Shea, I'd feel a little bit better, but unfortunately it's not. So you get a giant pitcher's park or a giant hitter's park now. What about Quintana on the opposite side? Like, it's clearly not a good spot by any means against the Yankees, but this is a relatively average-ish Yankees team. Quintana's 5,700 today. I'm at least a little bit interested.
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me is, so Quintana's not a great DFS pitcher. It's not a great matchup. It's not a great park. You certainly prefer right-handed pitching against the Yankees, but he's 5,700, and we don't have a very good mid-range of pitching today. You essentially have the 3 pitchers at the top. They're spread out in terms of salary, but they're still in their own kind of upper echelon with Strider, Valdez, Rodon, 9K and above. You have and Stroman, 9,400. You have Lance Lynn at 7,700. He's the only pitcher priced between 6,700 and 9K. So you get a situation where all those pitchers at the top do have concerns. It's not that difficult to envision a slate where, not that you necessarily need to pay down for pitching because there are cheap bats, but where bats just win this one and saving money at pitcher helps. So there's that. And then when you look at the cheap pitching, Hogan Harris is 5,300 pulling 18% ownership. Quintana, $400 more, pulling 6%. I prefer Hogan Harris. I was well over him in the Sims tool. It's a good park. It's not a good matchup, but I prefer him. But I don't think he's 3-1, a 3-1 favorite to Jose Quintana. So at the very least, it's a spot where in individual lineups, if you need a cheap pitcher and to save ownership, Quintana is good enough. He's a breathing starting pitcher. He's making his second start of the year, but last year he did only allow a 126 expected ISO to righties. It's not like this isn't like when Julio Teheran comes back after being lit up 4 years ago and not pitching in the majors since. This is somebody that at least showed the ability to get guys out last year.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy that is good, or at least has been good for the large majority of his career.
Yeah. 2,302 pitches thrown to right-handed hitters last season, 18.3% K percentage, 312 expected WOBA, 128 expected ISO. I'm not saying like we'll get to the Yankees. I think they're a good stack, but
yeah,
this isn't a $5,700 pitcher. It's a $6,700 7K guy.
Yeah, I have 11% right now. I wouldn't be mad if I ended up with a little bit more.
And also he threw 77 pitches last time out, went 5 innings.
Yeah, he should have I got him in for 5 innings. I don't think that there's any problem if like things are going well that he can go up to 90 or whatever. Then let's go to bats. The Yankees are second in ownership. The Mets are 9th. Neither one of those things should be all that surprising. The pitching matchup just got explained, but which team do you prefer to get to from a DFS perspective?
I think the Yankees. The value is pretty appealing in this lineup. It's still a pitcher in Quintana, sort of like Rodon, where he's probably still pretty good. Obviously not Rodon level good, but like Quintana's probably still like an average to slightly above average pitcher in terms of run prevention, below average in terms of strikeouts. But who knows? It's the second start of the year. He's pitching in Yankee Stadium. The Yankees were the team I got to the most in my Sims video a couple hours ago. Clearly that could change, but it's easy to explain why. They're cheap outside of a couple of hitters. Giancarlo Stanton at 5K. The Yankees have been a weak offense overall this year, but Stanton's fine, especially against left-handed pitching. That's a spot that I really like to get to. Gleyber Torres is 4,900. I don't have any issues there. Other than that, Anthony Rizzo at 4K is the next most expensive guy. You get Kiner Falefa leading off at 2,100. Not the most exciting hitter to get to, but he's a $2,100 leadoff hitter on a team with a 4.6 implied run total in Yankee Stadium. There's value there if you need it. LeMahieu's cheap, Bader's cheap, Volpe's cheap. So the Yankees are just really easy to get to in a decent spot. The Mets have a 3.9 implied run total. It's a tough matchup against the Yankees, but they were a team that I was getting to some in the Sims tool just because of that volatility around Rodon combined with the 33% ownership. The way it played out for me, and again, this is something where it could go a variety of ways by the time we get to lock, but the way it played out made a lot of sense where Rodon was projected for like 37% ownership at the time. He showed up in like 24% of my simulated lineups. And then I was getting 2 to 3x the field on Mets bats. So it created a situation where if Rodon goes out there and pitches like Rodon, I'm not dead. I still have a good amount of Carlos Rodon lineups, but you're just embracing the fact that even though the Mets are a low probability spot, when they succeed, you have a very clear path to the top of tournaments. You're not like with the Yankees. When the Yankees succeed, you're not really clearing anything out of your way because nobody's playing Jose Quintana. A lot of people are playing the Yankees because they're cheap. You're then relying on the rest of your lineups to do well. Whereas when the Mets do well, you just knocked a third of the field out with Rodon. You also just knocked out a lot of the field just because they don't have the Mets. And so even though it's not going to happen all that often, when it does happen, your payoffs look a little bit better.
Yeah, so I'm getting to a little bit more of the Mets than I am the Yankees. I'm finding it a little bit easier to get away from the Yankees. In particular, like Mark Vientos, $2,400 first baseman in the 2-hole, very much stands out. 205 projected ISO from Steamer, 6% ownership. I mean, that seems like a freebie at first base in this particular park too.
The problem is Alonso.
Yeah, if you want to have Mark Vientos, you don't have Pete Alonso. And well, he's probably better. So there's that. But I like the idea of getting on the opposite side of a little bit of Rodon's ownership here. Just, maybe he's still knocking the rust off. It's not like the Mets aren't talented. I mean, they've got a very talented lineup. So I like having at least a little bit of them on the opposite side if this goes tits up for Rodon.
Yeah, and also, back to the Rodon conversation, I said that I think it's more likely than not that he's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a situation, though, where, like, he got unlucky in those previous starts. The production he gave up, it's backed up, very small sample, but like 213 actual ISO to righties, 227 expected, 343 expected WOBA to righties. He's only thrown 46 pitches to lefties. But my point here is it's not like you're looking at it and it's just standing out, like glaring, like, oh, he's gotten really unlucky. He pitched poorly. It's just a matter of, is that indicative of what we're going to get going forward?
Do you approach stacking differently in a 5-gamer?
No.
Okay, just checking. Didn't know if you like shorten them or anything or added in more like 3-3-2s. Got to hit the people with the goods now that you're coming off the dub. Now your opinions are relevant again.
Yeah, of course. I'm pretty much just running 5-3, 5-2, like regardless of slate size.
Okay. The birthday boy, Neil Orfield, says, I don't think stadiums should be named after lawyers. Well, I'm still safe then because there was no chance I was ever going to be a lawyer. Although I feel like it'd be a good one.
I feel you'd be a really obnoxious one.
Yeah. I'm a little like an uglier Harvey Specter.
That's actually kind of what I was thinking.
Or like a more handsome Lewis Litt.
That you have a lot of Lewis Litt qualities.
That is not true at all. No, that is not true at all. Other than like the incredible intelligence.
I mean, you don't like mudding?
I would go mudding for sure. I doubt that I would want to pop off in the mud, though. Would you go mudding?
Probably not.
Really?
I don't think there's a lot. It doesn't sound particularly appealing.
I mean, look, if I'm at a spa and I'm just able to have a spa day and they're like, yo, we've got a mud thing. Just like, we're going to bring you a cocktail and you're sitting here for a half hour listening to music. And I'll be like, okay, that's probably pretty relaxing.
Yeah. I've also just never gone to a spa.
Okay. So there's your first mistake. And I mean that sincerely. I have spent a lot. I approach spas the way you approach strip clubs. Josh looks like a great value Big Ben. That hurts because I've got that before. Well, not the great value part. That one, I just got regular Ben Roethlisberger, not the Walmart version, which I don't love. I got that at a party in Villanova, freshman year of college. And I was just like, I would take that as a compliment, but Big Ben's face is fat. And then I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, oh, I've been drinking too much. I was just like, I was puffy and swollen. And I was like, I definitely look like Roethlisberger right now. But yeah, you need to go to the spa, man. You sit around a pool, gals everywhere, food. You're just like soaking in a tub. You go get a massage. No? Not a massage guy?
I wouldn't know.
Are you trying to tell me that you have never had a massage?
Professionally? No.
What do you mean professionally? Okay, I got you. I see where you're going there. Really? Jordan, you have, right?
Jordan lives in LA. This was extremely given.
So you're on my side for this one then, right? Okay. Thank you. You need to, dude, I get them regularly. Not even just like, oh, they're fun. Asian Relaxation, Wilmington, North Carolina. Those people are fantastic. They will beat the shit out of you if you want them to. But boy, oh boy, do you feel a lot better when you leave. And when I say massages, I mean real massages, not the Robert Kraft style. But now that you got a couple shekels, you should go get a massage, man. It is.
Yeah.
It's the thing. It's the thing. Jordan, we need a poll. We're going to finish off this game. Yay or nay to massages. And guys, hit that like button. There's about 500 of you. We got to get up to 100 likes. I'm starting to feel a little bit better, so we're going to keep this one moving. Let's finish this one off by, do you have anything else for Yankees or Mets?
No, I think pretty much hit on it. Yankees are the higher probability stack. They're going to be higher owned. They're good values in an okay spot against Quintana. Individually, I would say that Stanton is my favorite hitter in the game. The Mets side, it's more of your large field tournament type play where they're not going to succeed as often, but they are a talented offense in Yankee Stadium with a lot of negative correlations to the field.
Rank the game.
Rodon, Yankees, Mets, Quintana.
Yeah, I think that's what it has to be, but I think those things are closer than they seem.
Yeah, you can make the case where like it depends what you're asking me. Like if I wouldn't be surprised if like the Mets are my highest owned part of this game for game theory reasons. But in terms of like if everybody was bad at DFS and I didn't have to worry about what the field was doing, that's the order I would play things in.
Malakar, I don't think you should tell people that your sister's a masseuse and she's good. I would find a different way to send that sentence out into the world. You shouldn't know that. That I'm confident in saying. Would you get a massage if it were your sister?
No.
Feels like that one is less interesting. Orton's neckbeard. Is she a good kisser? Oh, this is fun. All right, guys, hit that like button if you haven't done it already. As I mentioned before, schedule for the rest of the day. MLB Live Before Lock coming up next. They'll take you from 6 to 7. You also get PGA Live Before Lock from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 3M, I believe, this week. So not as illustrious as a major, but it should be fun nonetheless. And if you guys want to bet on things, BetMGM is the way to do that. Link is in the description. If you've never signed up there before, you will get 1 month of Stochastic Plus Platinum right away, $150 value. That piece is easy because you only got to put $10 in to get this one done. However, if you're really looking to build yourself up a bankroll, you will get up to $1,000 in bet credits back if your first bet loses. So let's say you put 500 down on something and it wins. No changes happen. Money stays in your account. Do whatever you want. That's your bankroll. If it loses, you'll get that 500 back in bet credit. So any amount up to 1,000, that's going to work for you guys. This is the way to build a bankroll. Plenty of tools at Stochastic and Odd Shopper that can help you out. And all you have to do is click the link to do so. One quick reminder, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Josh looks 10 years older there. What's really funny is I'm aging more right now than I was a year ago at this time. Red Sox and Braves.
Jake Swales mentioned getting a massage playing poker. I don't think I have, but if I've gotten a massage, that would have been the situation.
Yeah, and that's like not the same. The key is being comfortable while it's happening. Like don't get me wrong, all massages are going to serve their purpose, but they're better when you could just like lay down and take all your clothes off. Josh looks like he was coming off a bender in that pick. Josh had been pretty banged up the 2 days before. I think the day that picture got taken was the day after I booted in the streets. So
yeah, it was the day after I flew in. Like I flew in that night, and then the pictures were
okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was. Life was rough. Not as rough as what it's going to be for Brian Bayo and the Red Sox today against my Braves. 4.4 run implied total for the Red Sox. 5.6 for the Braves. Brian Bayo going for the Red Sox. Spencer Strider going for the Braves. Two very different conversations here to be had from a pitching perspective. Strider is 12,700 and 26% owned. He deserves that ownership, but that price tag makes for an interesting discussion today.
Yeah, and the matchup does too. I mean, you have a 4.3 implied run total for the Red Sox here in Fenway Park, highest total on the slate, wind blowing out, 85 degrees. It's a scary spot for Strider, and he is expensive, especially on DraftKings at 12.7. I think he's 11.2 or 11.3 on FanDuel, so still priced up, just not to the same extent. But he still looks very good, and the salary does lower the ownership. We have him projected to be the fourth highest owned pitcher on the slate at 26%. I understand why because of that salary, but at the same time, you're talking about a 5-game slate where every pitcher has something wrong with them. And the guy that is striking out 40% of the hitters he faces this year is going to not be rostered by 75% of the field. Kind of interesting. And you do have value bats on this slate. Now, Strider is prohibitive because it's going to cost you the Braves bats for one, and, amongst other good hitters. But you can get the Strider if you want to. And the thing that's nice, and I said it this morning, I said it on my Sims video, but I don't think it gets talked about enough because everybody, for mostly good reason, focuses on upside and ceiling and all of that. You get the closest thing you're going to get from a floor in MLB DFS is a guy like Strider that just racks up strikeouts. That doesn't mean it's not like it's a hard floor where he can't score less than 12 points or anything. He can go negative just like anybody else. But his 5 earned run, 6-inning start is still typically going to get you 15 to 18 DraftKings points because he strikes out 10 guys. Whereas most, pitchers that give up 5 runs in 6 innings are just done and they're actively bad. You could get that start from Strider, and conceivably it'd be a good start on this slate because the Rangers get to Valdez and the Mets get to Rodon. So if you I want as much Strider as I can get to. It just becomes a question of how much is that, because the Braves are really expensive and they look good. And then obviously there's some other spots to pay for as well.
I'm not getting there. I'm getting to the Braves. So we'll get to that in a bit. But I think there's 12, and I don't ever have a problem getting to Strider. I think I had 100% of him, 2-3 weeks ago. But I think on a 5-game slate, that price tag really becomes a decision point for today. And it's just look, could he go out there and strike out 10 of these Red Sox guys? And it's just you got to hunt down Spencer Strider lineups because there's nothing you could do about it. Yeah, he's got that kind of stuff. He's arguably the best pitcher in baseball, but it takes a lot to pay off that 12-7. I mean, he's really just in a battle with all these other 9K guys. Because if Bayo or Rodon or Stroman or whatever, or even just in the ballpark, it's not going to be Strider in an optimal lineup. What do you want to do with Bay? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree with you. This is another spot where I think you could just approach it a couple of different ways. I will say in the Sims video that I did earlier, I got the 35% Strider. Acuna was my highest owned hitter. Albies was second, but I don't think I had a lot of full 5-man Brave stacks. So I had 13% 5-man Brave stacks. So I was able to still get to them, across different lineups.
So Bayo is unowned because the Braves are the best stack today, and it's not even remotely close. But then you look at prices, and it's not like Bayo's a good DFS guy or anything, but you look at Bayo at 9,100, and then you look at 33% owned Carlos Rodon, and it's is today a day where the Braves just score 2 runs and Bayo puts up 18 fantasy points, and all of a sudden that's just good enough at a situation? The problem is I don't know what he does to be essential.
Right. I mean, he's a good enough pitcher, about a 20.5% strikeout percentage overall. Good ground ball pitcher, but that doesn't really get you much in DFS other than helping to prevent runs. 26.5% K percentage against righties, but only 14.4% against lefties. You have a pretty balanced lineup here, righty, lefty, mostly throughout the entire lineup. So it's really tough at that price tag to get to him. 1% ownership for a good pitcher on a 5-game slate. I get that, but it's just tough to get there at that salary. I'm more inclined, if I am getting away from those top end pitchers, to just get away from them, get a different roster construction, and take my chances on a $5,300 Hogan Harris, as opposed to trying to get that lineup where I have the same roster construction as people playing Carlos Rodon and Framber Valdez, but I'm just using Brian Bayo. I don't really like that path as much.
Yeah. And he won't be 1%. He'll be 2.5 or 3 or whatever. And that Makes it look a little bit more reasonable.
And also, not the same level of low ownership, but effectively you can get what you're trying to accomplish done with Bayo by taking Stroman at 9,400 against the White Sox.
Yep, I agree. Okay, let's. Is there anything that we even need to say here about Atlanta other than the fact that Bayo is just like not a gas can or anything? Because they are the top stack and it is not close.
The one thing and I sort of mentioned it, he does have pretty drastic splits here. 26.5% K percentage to righties, 286 expected ISO, expected WOBA rather, 335 expected WOBA, and a 200 expected ISO to lefties with just a 14.5% K percentage.
Yeah,
by all means, play Acuna, play Riley, play Murphy, play Ozuna, but if you, especially, I guess this is most actionable for like hand builders because, projections are obviously factoring this in. But if you are in a situation where like you just have a lineup and you're trying to figure out exactly what expensive Braves you want, I would lean toward Olsen first. I can't say I would necessarily play Albies ahead of Acuna because like the talent gap there is pretty big, but you do have, the lefties in general, I think they're in a better spot.
I think Albies makes up for it a bit just by at least he's a second baseman. If he were an outfielder, then it wouldn't be as interesting.
Yeah, 1,100 last second base. My point was just like Acuna is a lot better than Olsen too, but Olsen is your best left-handed hitter in this.
No doubt about that. Yeah, and under-owned as far as I'm concerned, at least a little bit. Not like 14 is still enough, but that's a number that I wouldn't mind seeing go higher. I've got a ton of them. I can't get away from it. I assume Bayo goes out there and does good things, but I'm going big time to Atlanta. Do you want to go to Boston? Because we know what that path looks like.
Yeah, they were I think they were like my fourth highest owned stack, third highest owned stack, one of the two in the Sims video. And it's kind of like the Mets spot where, we certainly know what Spencer Strider is. And he's a very, very good pitcher, but he does have some power issues. He's allowed over a home run per 9 this year, 169 expected ISO to righties, only 125 to lefties. There's nobody that you're looking at on the Red Sox and saying, oh, this is a really good matchup. There's no Matt Olson versus Brian Bayo from the Red Sox. Spencer Strider is that good. He's very good against both sides of the plate. But we already said it, the wind's blowing out, 4.3 implied run total in Fenway Park. It's warm. The Red Sox are good, and they're not that expensive. Yoshida's 4,800 on DraftKings. Devers is 5K. Next most expensive hitter is Turner at 4,400. Everybody else below that. So pretty easy team to get to, especially, if you're willing to work in some Connor Wong at catcher, Tristan Casas at first base to save salary. So the upside for them is there. In the top stacks tool, I would know where they're at if I didn't have the top pitchers tool open twice by accident. They are coming in, I think, middle of the pack-ish, 8% chance of being the top stack, but that's about the same as the Mets. It's a little bit behind the Yankees. They're fine. They're not getting a ton of ownership. 10% aggregate ownership is fifth most on the slate. So not a good matchup, but it is a good hitting spot. Good hitting.
Rank the game.
Strider, Braves, Red Sox, Bayo. I really wouldn't be surprised at any order of Red Sox, Braves, Strider.
To me, it's Braves before Strider, but no big deal. It's the Atlanta side, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Massage is 68% yay, 32% no. So
congrats, YouTube chat's on your side.
Well, they should be geniuses around these parts.
Yeah.
Hey, look, after listening to me for 5 years, they better be smarter. Astros and Rangers. 4.8 run implied total for the Stros, 3.6 for the Rangers. Framber Valdez and Andrew Heaney. Man, this is a wild pitching slate. Valdez is 10,900. Heaney is 6,700. 40% ownership coming into Valdez, which I think is spot on. I think he's the best pitcher that you can get to today in terms of price and matchup and all of the things that can make you build a high-quality DFS lineup. I like Valdez more than I like Strider.
Yeah, Valdez looks good. They're pretty much neck and neck in terms of projection, and Valdez is quite a bit less expensive, particularly on DraftKings. No issues with getting to him. It is a tough matchup against Texas, but as we've kind of talked about, that's the only real flaw with Valdez here. Similarly, you have the tough matchup for Strider. You have a tough matchup and question marks about Rodon. You have Lance Lynn being Lance Lynn in terms of allowing home runs. There's no perfect pitcher on this slate. So Valdez still looks good. 27% strikeout percentage this year, 2.99 xFIP. You don't have Corey Seager for the Rangers, so at least you are missing one of their best hitters. Still a very dangerous lineup, though. I mean, 1 through 6, Semien, Duran, Lowe, Garcia, Young, Heim. You have Garver after that. Grossman, not the most dangerous hitter, but still a pain in the ass as far as taking pitchers against. Just works counts, fouls off pitches. He's one of those guys that I hated when he would lead off for the Tigers, because you're taking your pitchers against this bad offense, and then Grossman just has him at 12 pitches before he gets to the second hitter. But it's a tough spot for Valdez. But overall, very good pitcher. Only a 3.5 implied run total. It's 7 to 8 tenths of a run lower than Boston, which is why you're getting a similar projection for Valdez to Strider, even though Strider is far and away the superior strikeout pitcher.
What do we do with Heaney?
I think he's kind of interesting here since he's only getting 9% ownership at 6,700. Now, the matchup sucks. You have Yordan Alvarez back still, and you have Altuve back. So you have a full strength Houston lineup here. Altuve, Pena, Tucker, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, Chas McCormick hitting 7th, which, by the way, this is somebody who, when he had come up with Houston, he was just always batting 9th. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to him. He didn't always play. Are you aware that he's actually a good hitter?
I mean, I know that he has been a good hitter. Are you asking me if I'm aware that he should be a good hitter?
Yeah. He projects well. He's been good. I knew he'd been good just from playing him, but it was just somebody I'd never really looked at his numbers, because in my mind, he was just always the injury replacement bench guy. But he's another just competent hitter. We know Julks has power. It's a good lineup. It's a tough spot. Certainly would like Heaney more if you were still missing Altuve and Alvarez. But the reason I still think he's kind of interesting here is just that you're getting 9% ownership, 14% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher, 24% chance of being a top 2 value. Lance Lynn is getting 4 times the ownership, give or take.
Yeah.
Lance Lynn has plenty of home run issues of his own. You compare those two pitchers. Lynn is better, 27% K percentage, 3.95 xFIP, compared to a 24% K percentage and 4.6 xFIP for Heaney. But better home run park in Chicago. Lynn has allowed 2.19 home runs per 9. Heaney's only at 1.7. Heaney has power issues, but righties this year against Heaney have a 206 expected ISO. That's normal bad. Lance Lynn flirts with a 300 expected ISO to lefties. So my point here is that Lynn's the better pitcher. He projects better. He's the better play. But whatever concerns you have about Andrew Heaney, you can't tell me that they don't exist for Lance Lynn. And Lance Lynn's getting 4 times the ownership.
How are you feeling about the Astros bats here against Heaney? Obviously some upside. They are 4th in top stack. I'm actually a little bit higher on them, but I don't have as much. They are 4th in ownership at 11% aggregate. You trying to get to Houston here against Heaney?
I like him more than I did when I did the Sims video, now that we have the lineup and we have Altuve and Alvarez confirmed back. Heaney has held lefties to a 120 expected ISO this year, but when you're talking about Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez, I don't really care what the opposing pitcher has done. Those guys are so good. Alvarez, in particular, and then you're just getting right-handed power with Altuve, Bregman in particular. But the one thing that it does hurt, Alvarez and Altuve being back, you had been getting a version of the Astros stack where it was good, not great, but it was affordable. Now it's Braves-esque. They're not all 6K plus, but 5,700 for Altuve, 6K for Tucker, 5,300 for Bregman, and 5,500 for Alvarez. To stack the best part of the Astros, you are sacrificing pitching.
Of course, I take that sip of water at the moment you're done talking.
I wasn't watching.
That's fair. Well played. Thanks for that. Not a lot of ownership coming into Texas. They are dead last in aggregate ownership at 5%, 9th in top stack, 8th in top value. Obviously, anything goes on a 5-gamer. If you get shares of the Rangers, that's totally fine. You're gonna have bits of everything to a degree. Anything interesting here for you against Valdez? This is a tough. Other than them just being really good, it's a tough sell.
Right. That's what it is. They're really good. They're the lowest owned team on the slate, and they're one of the best offenses in baseball. But there's nothing, at least when you talked about Boston against Strider, you can point to the good hitting weather, the higher than normal implied run total against Strider. Here, good hitters park. Here, you don't have really any of that. It's just simply this team is really good.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add other than, they're mildly interesting at low ownership because it's your direct path to victory if it goes really well for Texas.
Right. It's the same argument that you made for the Mets and, to a lesser extent, the Red Sox, but
just worse.
Right. Exactly. but worse.
Rank the game. This seems really easy.
Valdez, Houston, Heaney, Texas.
Bingo. Or maybe I won't say bingo. Maybe I'll say boom. Nailed it. Because Boom is the sponsor of today's show. I'm excited to have it because they've got a little bit of a free square going on today. And I'm going to hit you with that first. If you're interested, you could add it today. Under 999.5 goals for Alex Morgan. I'd be happy to have 1,000 goals with Alex Morgan, but that's just me. Fantastic gal. Love her. Anyway, you should sign up at Boom because I'm quite confident she's not going to score 1,000 goals today. Although I have no idea who they're playing. The U.S. gals might be playing some country that hasn't had soccer very long, and they may score 1,000 goals. I wouldn't be surprised. But that's going to make things a lot easier for you. You can get up to $100 in bonus funds if your first entry loses. All you got to do is click the link in the description of this video. You can select 2, 3, 4, or 5 players. Got to pick whether they go more or less than their projected outcome, and then you're in great shape. You're going to get over-unders, and you're going to get individual matchups. So some it's going to be like Alex Morgan, over under 1,000 goals. Or you're going to get a matchup like, Alex Morgan, more goals than Megan Rapinoe. This is just off the top of my head. That could exist. Not as much in soccer. You can do all of this stuff at Boom Fantasy. We're excited to have them back. Boom's been around for a pretty long time at this point. In my mind, 5+ years, easy. But I think they easily predate me at Stochastic, but maybe I'm wrong. These guys have been around for a bit. Come check out Boom Fantasy. Link is in the description, folks. Buddy, they're playing the Netherlands. Well, they're probably pretty good if I had to guess. I do not watch the sport. 4.4 run implied total for the White Sox, 4.6 for the Cubs. Lance Lynn and Marcus Stroman, 37% ownership coming into Lynn at 7,700, 13% ownership coming into Stroman at 9,400. Kind of just wish that Stroman's price was 7,700. Anyway, what do you want to do with Lynn, who's like, I don't know, owned because he's 7,700?
I alluded to it at the top of the show. I have no idea if my lineups at lock will look like they did in the Sims video, but if they do, I have no issue whatsoever just kind of jamming both sides of this across your however many lineups you're playing. And this isn't a 150 max play everybody. If you're playing 3 max, I have no issue having 2 Lynn lineups and a Cub stack, or 2 Cub stacks and a Lynn lineup. Like, this is such a volatile spot, but also a spot where you just have cheap upside. It's kind of like we've been getting in those Minnesota-Seattle games where you have good pitching, but also high upside, cheap offenses. It's hard to see how something isn't really useful from this particular matchup. Lance Lynn has the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate at 27.3%, 3.95 xFIP. He's a good pitcher overall. The problem for him, and it's a very big problem, is that he cannot control the quality of contact to left-handed hitters. He has a 23% K percentage against lefties, which is good, but nowhere near his 31% K percentage to righties. But he's allowed a 317 actual ISO, 269 expected ISO to lefties, 443 actual WOBA, 385 expected WOBA to lefties. The Cubs don't have the best power lefties. Talkman, Happ, Bellinger, Mastroboni, and Barnhart are the 5 in this lineup. None of them are elite power hitters or anything like that. Talkman and Happ both have an expected ISO against righties this year between 150 and 160. Bellinger has an actual ISO of, I think, 186, but his expected is like 134. So you're not looking at any one guy and saying, this guy is for sure a great play. But if you hit left-handed against Lynn, you're in a good spot. And then you put that also in whatever they're calling U.S. Cellular Field now. I think like Guaranteed Rate Park or something.
Comiskey?
Right, yeah. It's just Lynn is. I think you could make a case Lynn is the best pitching option today at 7,700. Second highest strikeout percentage, decent enough matchup. But also you can make the case the Cubs are the best stack.
Yeah, he might be the best pitching. Like, that's also what makes me not like him. Oddly, and because it's so obvious, it's like, oh, well, he's 7,700. Like, this is a decent enough matchup. He's got big time strikeout stuff. It's so easy to see the positives for Lance Lynn. But it's not really reflected in ownership on it.
He's getting less ownership than Valdez. He's getting the same as Rodon. He's getting more. He's getting a little bit more than Strider.
Yeah,
and I guess that's sort of thing. If this were like if Valdez against the Rangers were like 30% instead of 40, and Rodon were 20% instead of 30, and Lynn were 50 instead of 36, I would have a very strong lean on I'm going very heavy on the Cubs, and that's my stand. But with Lynn getting his ownership being in line with the other best pitching options on the slate, but him being much less expensive when I don't love any of those other options for a variety of reasons, I'm inclined to just in non-Cub stack lineups, take the strikeout upside at a cheap salary from Lynn, get the best hitters I can, and then in lineups where I don't have Lynn, be using the Cubs.
I'm neutral to Lynn right now, and that's perfect for me. Like, it's not a decision point I want. I don't want to be like, oh, I've got 75, or I don't want to say, oh, I have 0. I'm happy with just like having parts of this. I don't have Stroman. I don't mind that I don't because he's Marcus Stroman, but at the same time, like, I think he's properly owned at 13%.
Do you have any problem taking a Cubs bat in the same lineup as Lynn? I'm not sure that I do.
And in general, if you have one, I don't care at all. Like,
yeah, I mean, in general,
especially if you get control for it. Like, I don't know if I want it to be Tucker Barnhart, but I'd be fine if it were Ian Happ.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in general, on 5-game slates, I'm not doing it. But I think this is kind of a different spot because you don't have those pitchers around Lynn. You certainly don't have anybody in salary close to Lynn that has the same upside that he does.
Yeah.
You could just conceivably get Lance Lynn goes 6 innings, gives up 2 home runs, strikes out 8 guys. Lance Lynn's a really good play, but if those home runs are to like Ian Happ and Cody Bellinger, or Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki, who obviously like, Suzuki's right-handed, but he's really cheap. Point being, that can still work out really well.
Yeah, I mean, on a 5-game slate, every home run has just become a guy that can be in a winning lineup, and like he got the score you needed. So, like, if you could pick those off, I think that's fine. And Lynn giving up home runs to lefties does not seem surprising. This isn't a new thing for this year. You add in last year, it's the same situation.
Mike Banishar said, what happens when Lynn gets scratched because he's being traded and it's announced after lock? Then you get a 0 for Lynn.
Yeah, I would be shocked if that happens. He would already not be starting tonight.
Right.
If that conversation, like, no one's on the phone right now on a Lance, like, on the 1-yard line for a Lance Lynn deal, he would already just not have been the starter today.
You would think.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, it is
now that
possible.
I said that
out. I mean, it's not like the White Sox are the most competent organization. He could get pulled in the 3rd inning and find out he's going to the Dodgers. But
yeah, that would blow my mind. Like, if it's a hitter, it's one thing where you just trot him out and do whatever.
Right.
But like for a pitcher, like there's trickle down effects to that like have to be prepared for.
Right.
For hitters, you just sub somebody out.
And Orton's neckbeard, like no Major League Baseball team is basing their decision to trade for Stroman or Lynn or what to give up for them on how they pitch today.
No, unless you open it up and Lance Lynn's velocity is down like 5 miles per hour and he gets
right. It's nothing but that's the point you're making. It's nothing but a negative. Like Lance Lynn can go out there and dominate, and no team's gonna be like, oh shit, we didn't think we needed Lance Lynn, but now we really do. If the Dodgers turn the game on and he's throwing 91 miles, I don't know how hard he normally throws, but I'm pretty sure it's harder than he only throws 92, but he's throwing 84. Like they're going to be concerned.
Talk to me about the Cubs bats against Lynn. I mean, like we've alluded to them so far. They're 3rd in top stack. They're 3rd in ownership. I just kind of like both sides of this. I like the Cubs equally to Lance Lynn. Yeah,
so do I. And that's what I was saying. With ownership the way it is right now, I just like getting as much of this as I can on both sides. And again, that's not speaking out of both sides of my mouth. It's a very easy thing that you can do if you're playing more than a single lineup. Yeah, they look good. They're 3rd in top stack percent, they're 3rd in ownership. They are 2nd in stack score. They are 3rd in top stack percentage. Atlanta's 1st in top stack percentage, but they're a totally different price tier. Like they don't even really count. But yeah, I like the Cubs a lot. I like Lynn a lot.
You like the White Sox bats a lot or at all in this spot? Because we haven't really talked about them. They're 7th in top stack. It's a terrible spot against Marcus Stroman. This is just a guy that does not get touched up.
Yeah, it's more difficult here. I had this as the game of the day in my article earlier, and this was the most difficult spot to like write about. It was very easy to say why I like Lynn. It was very easy to say why Stroman's a reasonable contrarian pitcher. It was very easy to say why I like the Cubs. The White Sox, it's a good park. They're not getting much ownership. but there's nothing that stands out. Like Marcus Stroman this year, 19% K percentage to lefties. That's a bit lower than 23.5% to righties, but a sub 100 expected ISO to lefties, 124 to righties. You don't have anything where you're looking at it and saying, this guy's in a really good spot against Marcus Stroman. You can certainly say this is a good hitter's park and Luis Roberts a good hitter, or Jimenez has power, or Moncada's back and he's cheap, whatever. But you don't have the, this guy's in an advantageous spot. So if you're going to the White Sox, it's more so they still have a 4.5 implied run total. They're cheap. They're not that popular. But it's just hey, let's hope baseball breaks my way, more so than like, I think this is going to work.
It just really doesn't ever against Stroman. He gave up 3 home runs against the Dodgers earlier this year. He's given up 7 on the year in 21 starts. Like if he's given up 1 home run every 3 games, like at best, the downside is like, oh, he gave up 2. That's like your hope, and then you're hoping to chase the bullpen because like he just doesn't get touched up.
Yeah, 57.8% ground ball percentage this year. 3.76 xFIP, 21% strikeout percentage, give or take, in the aggregate. Like if you're playing the White Sox here, you are just hoping variance works in your favor, which is not like, I think a lot of times when you say that word, it has like a negative connotation. It's not a bad thing. You are you're putting yourself in a position to get lucky at low ownership. That is a pretty big part of playing DFS in general, and particularly MLB. But it's just, you're not looking at anything in particular. Like, for example, I would never take a White Sox hitter against Marcus Stroman on a slate like this because there's nothing you're pointing to like, hey, this guy's probably going to hit a home run.
No. Do you think, is Marcus Stroman the worst guy to face in a DFS situation that also doesn't get owned as a pitcher? Like
he's got to be up there.
Like you never want to stack against him, and you basically never want to roster him.
Yeah, you get it with pitchers like this where they're priced for their run prevention skills more so than their strikeout skills.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's certainly near the top of the list.
Yeah, because like obviously there are a lot of pitchers you don't want to face, but those are the Spencer Striders of the world that also then get 50% ownership because they mow everybody down. That doesn't happen with Stroman, right. But he's also equally is just like, I don't want that shit, man. Keep me away from this.
Right. Like my immediate, before I realized where you're going with the question, I was going to say Valdez because he's another one where not only is he like he's obviously much better at getting strikeouts and everything than Stroman, but like you get a lot of aces where it's like, okay, they do give up power though. You can get to them when they make mistakes. And it's like, Valdez is either striking you out or he's just pounding the zone at the bottom of the zone and you're hitting it straight into the ground. Like he just doesn't give up anything.
Rank the game.
Lynn, Cubs. Stroman and the White Sox are really comparable plays.
Yeah. And so I would rather have Stroman just because I don't think there's any, like if I take the White Sox, I have to hope that it happens in 7, 8, 9.
Yeah. I mean, I still think I would go to the White. I would lean White Sox over Stroman just because of what the rest of my lineup can look like.
Fair.
I mentioned it earlier when we talked about Bayo. If you're going like the direct pivot route to somebody like Carlos Rodon, I would rather go Stroman than Bayo. Better chance of success, better matchup, all of that. But my preferred approach, if you're not getting to, Valdez or Rodon or Strider or whatever, isn't to find like the direct pivot. I think it's to just go to like Hogan Harris and hope that he doesn't completely suck and that you can just beat those good pitcher lineups with your bats as opposed to like trying to get the same quality of bats and then just get Stroman over Rodon.
Let's close this one out. 5-run implied total to the Giants. Not a lot to talk about for this one either. 3.5 to the A's. Alex Wood for San Francisco, Hogan Harris for the A's. Wood and Harris equally owned, 6K and 5,300. Which guy would you prefer to have?
I wanted to clarify, just in case it wasn't clear. Shane Hall said he'd rather have Stroman. Salary agnostic, I would much rather have Stroman than the White Sox. Salary, $9,400 Stroman versus free White Sox. I'd probably get to the White Sox first.
For sure.
I lean towards Harris here just because he is a little bit less expensive, and we know exactly, like, at least as of now, he is starting. Wood, we're expecting to be the bulk guy, but you still get that, a little bit of extra risk where it's just like, okay, exactly what does that mean?
Okay. Well, I got 13% Wood. I got 21% Harris. I'm just going to have both of these guys as like low owned dudes that cycle in because it's a great park to have a pitcher. I'm not excited for it, but that's where we're going to be for value because I've got a shit ton of Braves.
Yep, he looks good. Or they both look good from a value standpoint. You're not confident in either one. Alex Wood so far this season. Now this is just as a starter, the way I have it set on FanGraphs, but I don't know. This is overall this season. Never mind. 19.5% K percentage, 11.5% walk percentage, 5.4 xFIP. He hasn't been very good, but he is in a good park. He does have a good matchup. Oakland has a 3.3 implied run total. Wood is getting 18% ownership, 16% chance of being a top 2 scoring pitcher. Harris is getting 18% ownership, 11% chance being a top 2 scoring pitcher, but he is $700 less expensive. I was getting to more Harris when I did my Sims video earlier. He was actually my second highest owned pitcher. And again, this is one that kind of happens a lot when I do the early Sims video because we don't have lineups out yet. So we don't have unexpected things like Kiner Falefa leading off at 2,100 as a value piece. But also from a roster construction standpoint, it just makes sense today. You're taking a risk for sure on somebody like Harris or somebody like Wood if you're getting a lot of them. They're nowhere near as talented as other options on this slate, but you're also taking a risk playing Strider at nearly 13K. You're taking a risk playing an 11K Valdez against Texas. I think you could just make the case that this is pretty likely to be a slate that is just won by hitting. The best scoring pitchers on the slate, can very conceivably score 17, 18, 19 DraftKings points. I mean, Strider has the highest projection for us at 20.7, Valdez at 19.5. If those guys just hit that projection, as long as like the Braves or some other expensive stack goes off, you probably still don't really need them as long as Harris, Wood, whatever you went to, still scores like, 12, 13, something like that.
Oh, man. I have way too much of the A's right now, which I hate because obviously they're the A's. And
I have a feeling I'm
in this park. Yeah, I don't like it. They're just free. So
they're free and they're just not getting that much ownership. When you talk about the free teams, the other cheap teams on the slate, I guess I should say, the Giants are getting a little bit more ownership, though they're not getting quite as much as I expected either. You have the Cubs getting a lot. You have the Yankees getting a lot. Oakland's first in top value percentage. They are fifth in stack score. Their stack score is 8.9. They're getting 7% ownership. Every team ahead of them in stack score every team ahead of them in stack score is getting at least 9% aggregate ownership. 3 of them are in double digits. So I have a feeling I'm going to get to them. I don't want to. I hope that I don't, but it makes sense given the pricing.
Anything you want to add on the Giants? I am very different than we are in terms of their chances of being the best team today. What do you like? I have them. I don't like it. I generally hate having them, particularly against lefties. Is this I never know what to do with San Francisco, particularly in San Francisco. And I feel like I get them all the time.
Yeah. If the current ownership holds, I think they look pretty good. We have them first in stack score. And like you said, you're not as high on them from a top stack standpoint. I think that's fine, but it's the value component that's really driving it up. So you could knock them down a peg in terms of stack score or in terms of top stack percentage, and their stack score is still going to look good. One thing also to like, though, you are getting most likely Marco Luciano in this lineup. He was called up. He's expected to play today.
AAA this year. Pool, I don't think.
What?
I don't think he's in the player pool.
I thought he was 2,100. Oh, no, you're right. I looked earlier and I thought he was there, and I guess I looked at something wrong.
Sorry, didn't want to cut you off, but
so
that's cool that he's up and all, but
it's a thing not to like is you're losing a spot in the Giants lineup. So I take that back. I don't know what I looked at earlier. I think he's in Fantasy Cruncher, but he's not in the player pool.
Gotcha. He might be on there for FanDuel. I didn't look, but I know he's not in there for DraftKings.
I think that's what it was when I was doing the Sims tool. I knew we didn't have him in projections. Maybe so. I don't know if I looked at just a projected lineup or if I looked at Fantasy Cruncher. But
chat says he's in on FanDuel.
Okay. So if you're playing FanDuel, Luciano looks good. DraftKings not an option, and it does make it a little bit weaker because now you still have that pinch hit risk for guys like Slater, Luis Matos. You're just losing a lineup spot on top of that.
Rank the game.
Harris, Wood, Giants, A's. A bunch of cheap stuff that I don't like, but that something's going to work out.
Thank you to Boom Fantasy for being the sponsor here. MLB Live Before Luck coming up next. Thanks to Jordan for being the producer of the show. Thanks to Adam for being here. Sign up for the Sims tool. Link in the description. Win like Adam. Click that link. Don't click the link that Adam provides you on Twitter so he gets no credit. Good luck tonight, everybody. Enjoy the games. Back tomorrow doing it all again. Peace.
Why not?
You don't have a preference, like, at all? Oh, we're doing the countdown now?
Yeah, we've reached that point.
All right. Oh my God, this is just chaos on Eric's TV, though.
It's okay. Just start talking. You're fine.
I think that's what I've been doing.
How about that shit? Right in the nick of time.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for MLB Live Before Lock. It's a big day today because, are you aware that it's somebody's birthday today, Eric?
Did Neil turn 50?
Neil turned 50 years old today. So because he wanted to go out and be hanging out with his family, he went out to dinner today. He's off for the rest of the day. In fact, he's off for the rest of the week due to his 50th birthday. So if you guys have not done it yet, go at Neil on Twitter or x.com, whatever the hell you choose to call it these days, at Player Q DFS, because if you add Neil, just make sure to wish him a happy 50th birthday. I know that he will greatly appreciate all of those birthday wishes from all of you guys. In the meantime, it's going to be Eric and myself breaking down tonight's MLB slate. So if you guys could be so kind, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are sponsored today by Boom Fantasy. And if you guys remember, last week, Boom Fantasy did, I believe it was Julio Rodriguez, over under 999.5 home runs, not for his career, not for a week, not for a month, for one individual game. He ended up hitting the under on that mark. And for today, we've got another good one. Alex Morgan to have less than 999.5 goals. So I know a lot of you probably picking the U.S. women's team to win their next game. Alex Morgan, though, probably not going to score 1,000 or more goals. Maybe she puts up 10. Maybe she puts up 20. That's to be well short of this mark. So if you guys have not checked out Boom Fantasy, this is the absolute easiest way for you guys to make some free money today. You go download Boom Fantasy. We've got a link below that will download the app for you. When you're there, use the promo code Stochastic, up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit and get access to over under 999.5 goals for Alex Morgan. Now, Eric, I haven't watched a ton of the World Cup. How safe a bet would you say this under is?
I'm going to say 100%.
100.
100. We're not going to even joke around with the people about things like this. It's a stone cold lock, the likes of which the world has never seen. Not even Lindy's Leans likes and locks. So fire it up to the moon.
So go and check it out. By the way, I should have Stochastic1 is the promo code. Yes. I said Stochastic. Stochastic1. So you want to put that number at the end.
You're fired. Except for you're in charge of yourself, so you can't be. That doesn't really work. That doesn't work at all.
To explode. I'll give you this. If Alex Morgan scores over 1,000 goals today, you guys will never see me on the YouTube channel again. Deal?
Deal. Oh God. You know what? We gotta change the scoring system for a day. You get 1,000 goals when you score.
So go ahead, guys. Take advantage of this offer at Boom Fantasy. It's a free square. No easier way for you to put some cash in your pocket today. So go download the Boom Fantasy app. Sign up using that promo code Stochastic1. And we got some MLB DFS to talk about today as well, Eric. Only a 5-game slate. Did you play the early slate by chance?
Played one lineup. It had Zach Eflin. I haven't looked at it since.
I played one lineup. It had Zach Eflin, and I came in 5th place in the 121 single entry.
You played the Mariners again, didn't you?
I did. So now here's the question. Am I supposed to be tilted by that, happy, or both?
Both. You're supposed to be both because Eflin, I mean, I'm on the under of that game, and you finally ran into the Sandy Alcantara experience that we were waiting for. Sure enough, could have just clicked him at, a third of that ownership, but no, I'm a little lemming. I had to go jump off a cliff with Zach Eflin, hit my head on the way down. I am no longer with us. It was such a dumb game to watch. Did you watch it? Zach Eflin just throwing bean balls, just
Didn't watch any. I did see he got hurt, right? So apparently he was trying to pitch through an injury.
Idiot.
Who knows what the deal was? But so like you, where you just kind of stop paying attention. Here's how I found out my lineups were actually, I had so many meetings today. I was on meetings starting at like 10:30 a.m. my time. I was on a meeting every single 30 minutes on the half hour, basically up until an hour ago when I started getting ready for the show and running lineups. So just like you, I kind of checked the score of the game and I saw, oh, look, Zach Eflin is absolutely getting his shit kicked in. I don't need to check the slate for the rest of the day. I'm on Twitter, though, and I see I have a notification from Lee B. Calicor, who runs our projections. And he goes, hey, look, Ehrenberg DFS came in 5th place today with Zach Eflin in his lineup. I was like, oh, cool. I came in 5th place. But like you, I totally stopped paying attention after he got his ass kicked because I also only played the one lineup and it ended up doing pretty decent.
Yeah, I had Matt Wallner and Jose Ramirez in my lineup, and I barely cashed. I made like $15. I just looked it up. I got like a minimum cash on a so $40 and $15. I made $55 this morning on my one lineup with Zach Eflin in it. Nice job, good effort, you dipshit.
Yeah, I mean, overall it was solid. I just played that one lineup, and by the way, actually, I should for the sake of being totally accurate, actually came in 7th in the 121. But still,
don't lie to the people.
No, I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure I had it accurate. The big performers for me, Freddie Peralta scored 1 million fantasy points. I had
Jordan, can you stop swiveling in your chair? Please.
Me?
He's doing this. He's been doing this for like 10 minutes, and I'm trying to watch Greg and interact with my co-host, and all I see is Jordan. It's just like Dr. Evil.
Is that so I try not to pay attention to him because I find his lack of sleeves to be disturbing while I'm on shows. Like, come on, we're at a workplace and you can't get sleeves. Like Jordan's never fully dressed for the show, but as he pointed out before, he actually has washed this shirt as recently as a few weeks ago. He's only worn it a few times since he last washed it, which is good for him. Usually he wears the same clothes 20, 30 times before.
No crust on that one. That's nice. That's good.
No, his hair looks great today. It's a good day for Jordan Klein. He's looking fresh.
He's ready to start the show now.
Yeah.
That's what we get. That's the lack of professionalism here at Stokastic.com that you can expect on a daily basis from one Jordan D. Klein. Big Jordan D.
Julio Rodriguez scored 1 million fantasy points. Dylan Moore scored 1 million fantasy points for me, and all ruined by Zach Eflin. Or else I could have made some really serious money on the early slate. But
I do have one question, though, because a lot of people saw Jordan Klein flipping tires on Twitter.com recently. You saw Jordan Klein flipping tires, yeah?
No, I didn't. Jordan, can you put that on screen for everybody?
Yeah, pull it on screen. But here's the thing. How many push-ups do you think Jordan Klein did before he had the worst push-up form that I have ever seen in my entire life before flipping a tire? And also, what? You maybe moved your arms this much to do a push-up, and then you start flipping a tire just fine. So I was a little bit confused why this was so hard, but that was so easy. I'm a little confused.
So, Jordan, I'm going to need you to put the video on screen and also let Eric and I see it so we can watch it alongside with the audience at the same time, because I haven't seen this. I don't know what you were up to today. I was busy. I want to see this video, and I think we could also rate his push-ups. Like, how do his push-ups look against Robert Kennedy Jr.'s, for instance? He's going to be running for president. Is Jordan trying to throw his hat into the ring to be president? Because I do think most of these things are ultimately going to come down to, in the future, things like MMA fights, things like push-up contests. And I think that is how all presidential elections are going to be settled after EMAC's, presidency comes to a conclusion, which will be in 2032. Yep. And then we'll start doing, physical activities to determine presidents. Is Jordan going to put this on screen or no?
We're going to find out. He's pulling it up. Right. Again, you got to show. If you got the guns, you got to show them. All right. But hang on. You didn't show the push-up. Yeah, start it over. Here we go. What was that? What am I looking at? Buddy. And then the tire is fine. You can flip the tire just fine. I'm so confused. The ratio between how shitty the push-up was and how clean the tire flip is, I have no words.
It's maybe the worst push-up I've ever seen in my entire life.
Fact.
It wasn't great. I'm curious, when it comes, do you be honest?
I'm going to do some push-ups quick.
Do you normally do better push-ups than that, or was...
Yeah. It was a terrible, yes, Ryan read about it was terrible. It was a terrible push-up.
We're gonna have to get some fitness challenges going on here in the future. With that said, the tire flipping looked pretty fucking good. Jordan, I appreciate the hard work. The push-ups, though.
I'm here for fitness challenges as long as we can kill Jay Kari before we do it. We just have to kill Jay Kari, otherwise he's gonna win all of the things.
As people probably know, or maybe don't know, Jay Kari absolutely destroyed Eric in a one-on-one basketball game.
I didn't know he was a basketball player. That wasn't fair. I thought he was a hockey player.
He's not both. So also, Jake has a lot of good vanity looks to him. His cardio, not great. Because if I'm going to give you one thing, Eric, to let you hang your hat on, we had already played like 3 or 4 basketball games at that point before Jay Kari came out and kicked your ass. But you guys were both totally gassed in that game.
Philip Rivers gift.
How much did you have to pay him for that, by the way?
$250.
Tough beat. We got a baseball slate to talk about as well, and a few pay-up options that are on the slate today. And we have Spencer Strider priced all the way at $12,700 on DraftKings. FanDuel, $11,200. So by far, Spencer Strider is the most expensive pitcher on the slate. However, he's not the most popular. Strider over on FanDuel is projected for 17.7% ownership. Over on DraftKings, 27.4%. So it's, a healthy amount of ownership, but this is a small slate. There's only 5 games, and Spencer Strider is the 4th most popular pitcher, which typically you see a slate with Spencer Strider, no matter what the size is, you typically would expect him to be the most popular pitcher, but due to his price point, that is not the case. So Eric, what are you going to be doing with a very expensive Spencer Strider on a small slate who, all things being considered, isn't all that popular?
I'll play 100% of him every single time. There's not a single situation where I'm getting positive leverage on Spencer Strider that I don't jam him. I'm only playing 20 lineups, but all 20 have Spencer Strider in them. There's no way around it. I'm just going to jam him here. And I love Framber Valdez. I bet his K-prop today. I think he stands out against Texas here in this spot as well. But he's more popular in DFS than Spencer Strider, and I totally understand the $1,800. It might be preventative to some of you. Doesn't feel the best up there, going all the way up top, but it's positive leverage on the best strikeout pitcher we have in baseball right now. I don't know what I'm missing other than, you give me this opportunity. It doesn't come around very often to get a positively leveraged Spencer Strider.
The last time I ran my lineups through the Sims, I have to update them one more time once we get a fresh ownership on the San Francisco Giants, because the Giants had a different lineup than we projected, most notably Ryan Walker. Not Ryan Walker, Lamont Wade Jr. I just said Ryan Walker because he's a pitcher today. Lamont Wade Jr. was not in our initial starting lineup because Hogan Harris is going to be pitching the bulk innings for the A's, but they are still going to be going with Lamont Wade. So once we get an ownership update on Lamont Wade, I'm going to have to run my lineups through one more time because the Giants are a team I'm getting a good amount of exposure to. But Spencer Strider, nearly 70% of my lineups, right around there. He's my most exposed player on the entire slate. I don't have an issue with it. Like you said, when you get this kind of positive leverage, a fairly contrarian, all things being considered, Spencer Strider, to me, you just go with it. The matchup against the Red Sox, sure, it might not be ideal, but Strider to me is about as matchup proof as they come. If his stuff is on, he's generating a bunch of strikeouts, scoring a lot of fantasy points. Unless something changes with his ownership, which it doesn't seem like it's going to in any kind of real significant way, Spencer Strider is going to be by far my most rostered player on the entire slate. And I think that should apply to both DraftKings and FanDuel. I love getting to on both sites.
I love that we're on the same page as it. And I guess this is the question that is being posed. Wow, that limits your stacks. That's what R. Cathelza says. It absolutely does to a certain extent, but also it gives you an opportunity to almost give yourself a guy who's coming in almost 40% optimal in terms of top 2 pitcher percentage. So 40% compared to his ownership sub 30%. I would much rather go towards that and take shots with different teams and different stacks that aren't the Braves than trying to find ways to jam in a popular Braves stack on this same kind of a slate. Because just because you stack up the Braves doesn't give you the opportunity to know exactly which hitters show up. You know exactly who's showing up in your optimal if it ends up being Spencer Strider. So I'm much happier to try to get contrarian with my stacks, take shots on a positively leveraged San Francisco team that I don't always love stacking up here, but sits below them in top stack percentage, but has more positive leverage going their direction. That's a much easier way for me to build on this slate. I'm happy to not have to just jam chalk with chalk.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the stacks we're getting to alongside Spencer Strider in a second here, but here's the flip side of this. If we are overweight to Spencer Strider by default, it means we have to be underweight to one of the chalky pitchers because you can't be overweight to everybody on the entire slate, not how this game is played. So we've got Framber Valdez is 38% owned, Carlos Rodon 30.7% owned, Lance Lynn 37%. Of the other three chalky pitchers, which one of them are you most apt or are you currently most underweight to?
So the right way of saying this, because I have 30% for Amber Valdez, and again, that is a specific kind of build that I'm running into with that. I'm obviously playing some Oakland bats, some really cheap stuff from, the Yankees, from the Mets, making it work to be able to get those kind of builds. Not my necessarily favorite. But by default, I'm looking at shorting one of these other guys. And Carlos Rodon is just not showing up for me in any way, shape, or form. It has to do with the 9K price tag. Lance Lynn is uncomfortable, and he's actually more popular than a Carlos Rodon. But that 1,300 does go quite a ways for me to be able to get some of the high upside bats. I'm getting to 2-mans and 3-mans of the Braves as a result, and kind of mixing them into my stacks that way. Almost impossible to get to the 5-mans of the big boppers from Atlanta with Spencer Strider unless you're going to Hogan Harris over and over again, which maybe you are, but I'm not going to be doing that here today. So I'm underweight to all three of them, but by far the most significant, Carlos Rodon.
Yeah, I am also underweight to all three. And Rodon's such a tough one because I don't know, is he still being impacted by the injury? Is he working rust off, or is the injury just actually impacted his talent level at this point? Because he's been absolutely dog shit. Carlos Rodon, I'm going to pull up his numbers so far, and it is a small sample size. He's only made a handful of starts for the Yankees. He was pitching in the minor leagues before being hurt earlier on in the year. There's twofold issues I have with Carlos Rodon beyond just the results, because the results are clearly terrible. 7.36 ERA, 5.78 expected ERA, 7.17 FIP. The other issue here as well is he doesn't seem to know where the ball is going once it leaves his hand. He's not throwing strikes. He's a 13.8% walk rate. He has a 16.9% K rate. So I'm with you. I'm also underweight to all three of these. I'm not outright fading any of them. I'm just underweight. Like all these pitchers, I have about 20% of, which is about half of what the field has, which that's where the Strider ownership comes from, right? I'm well overweight to the field on Strider. And then it's like 10%, 15% of each of these guys gets allocated to Strider for me. But Carlos Rodon's the one I have the hardest time feeling comfortable about, and I am the most underweight to him. Are amongst these guys, is it like 0% of them for you? And I know you said you're playing 20 lineups. Is it 20%? What are you going to be doing with these pitchers who we both agree are a little bit overweight, all things being considered, but how underweight do you want to be on them?
Yeah, I'm way under. I'm at 10% on Carlos Rodon. I am at 25% here on Lance Lynn at the moment. So again, I'm getting to more Lance Lynn. Framber Valdez, I'm getting the most of the three. Again, a very specific type build, but there are Oakland bats that are cheap. There are White Sox bats that are cheap. There are San Francisco bats that are cheap. The back half of certain lineups across the entire board, even if you look directly at Atlanta's prices for today, you get some 3,900, 3,700 Ozuna Rosario. That's a 2-man that seems to be showing up for me against Bayo. So while I'm really hoping runs do not show up in that Atlanta-Boston game, I can still find ways to get to exposure. You have 3,300 per player left when you put it together. And just like you said before, yes, it limits your stacks, but this is a 5-game slate. I'm much happier to make strong stands on this kind of a slate to be able to take my shots. I'm more comfortable with 10 to 12 games. That seems to be my sweet spot for MLB DFS. But on today, with 20 lineups, I'm just going to jam Strider and figure out the rest of it.
Yeah. I mean, these are the slates that I personally like the most. These 5-game slates where I go ahead and do things that a lot of people would think are dumb, like stack the Seattle Mariners against Joe Ryan, who's by far the most popular pitcher on the early slate. More often than not, it loses. But the times it works, like even today, mentioning before, I had Zach Eflin in the one lineup I played in the afternoon slate. He got lit up. He scored 0 fantasy points. And because I stacked against the most popular pitcher in Joe Ryan and he got smashed as well, I still ended up winning a couple grand for the slate. I ended up having some really highly, performing finishes in those GPPs. So I like these kind of slates. I think you really want to manipulate some of the ownership, and going to be overweight to Spencer Strider. One other thing that I see people talk about in the YouTube chat, so I think we should bring up here. And by the way, if you have any additional questions for us, at me in the Discord channel, if you're in our Discord, and we'll answer some of those. Hogan Harris is technically not starting for Oakland today. He's going to be coming out of the pen. This should not change how you view him at all, because if you look at Hogan Harris, he's made a handful of relief appearances this year. Like he alternates. So overall for the year, he has made, let's see, something. I think he's made 11 appearances, 5 starts, 6 out of the bullpen. Know what that said? Hogan Harris is terrible, right? You don't know what you're getting out of him. Mm-hmm. He's either going to be bad, or he's going to be lucky and be decent. Those are kind of the outcomes you're going to be getting here out of Hogan Harris. I don't think this should change how you view him at all. On FanDuel, maybe, because you don't have access to the quality start anymore. But as far as DraftKings goes, do you care that Hogan Harris is no longer the starter?
No, it's a good thing. Here's the thing. For DraftKings purposes, where you're not worried about a quality start, you're not worried about the win bonus on FanDuel, where there's absolutely going to be a difference in terms of projection, it's better for a guy like this to avoid 1, 2, 3, because it's just like what I talked about with Pavetta yesterday. I do an update on Lindy's Leans Likes Locks, where I kind of cover the ins and outs of why I think, because books aren't going to react to certain numbers, and you want to be more reactive when circumstances change, then it appears the books want to be in these kind of spots. Yesterday, Nick Pavetta ends up avoiding 1, 2, 3. In the Braves lineup, it matters a lot more than most lineups, because that turns into fucking Acuna, Albies, and Riley. You avoid those 3, you're getting 3 more at-bats against the likes of Arcia, Ozuna, and Michael Harrison. Are they the worst batters in the entire world? No, they're not. But it's still, by all intents and purposes, a better thing for a pitcher when you're not getting penalized for something like this to avoid the 1, 2, 3 hitters in any lineup from now until the end of time, unless a manager's just an idiot and they're playing their best hitters 4, 5, 6 for whatever godforsaken reason. It shouldn't ever happen in the year of our Lord 2023. It's not happening today. Lamont Wade Jr., Wilmer Flores, JD Martinez, especially in this specific spot. Maybe San Francisco goes back and changes up their lineup order. We'll know that beforehand, but for all intents and purposes, those are the guys that against a lefty or against most hitters are going to perform better than the likes of a Patrick Bailey, a Marco Luciano, and a Casey Schmidt, a Mike Yastrzemski, a Luis Matos. Like, it is a big deal, and I don't think it gets talked about enough.
So then the flip side of this, and I don't want to get too far ahead, we still have to talk about the rest of the pitchers, but because it warrants consideration while we're on the topic, do you have any concern that we're going to potentially see the Giants go really early to pinch hitters now? Like, is this a scenario? Yeah. Could we see guys at the top of the Giants lineup only get 1 plate appearance?
This is always the concern with the Giants. It should be from now until the end of time. And yeah, it's especially so now that Oakland's out here changing up the game and doing their thing to kind of combat it. I don't know why, because again, they're not in the business of actually winning baseball games right now. Oakland is thinking about Monday. They should only be thinking about what their plan is to unload whomever people want to go grab, trying to develop young talent and moving along with their lives. They should not be concerned with actually trying to win baseball games. Maybe they want to try the opener stuff. Maybe they want to experiment with Harris, maybe giving him a better opportunity to succeed in a spot like this. But there's no doubt that San Francisco could pinch hit 1 hitter into every single spot here. You could see, I think it's pretty likely that you see pinch hitters throughout this lineup show up before the 5th inning if Hogan Harris isn't going to pitch deep into this one. And you go from a righty to a lefty, and that's going to change the handedness throughout. As long as San Francisco keeps their lineup the way that it is, I don't have the concerns for JD Martinez. For JD Davis, for Wilmer Flores here at the top of this one, but you could easily see them go to any number of guys with Casey Schmidt there at the back half of the lineup, Marco Luciano at the back half of the lineup, who's not available on DraftKings today, so it doesn't matter as much. But there are definitely pinch hit concerns you should have in the back of your mind every time you roster San Francisco, especially in this kind of a situation.
Yeah, I'm rerunning some lineups right now, and I think I'm still just going to kind of let it rip with what I end up with, and then I'll make some any kind of adjustments.
Yeah, it's only a 5-game slate too. Yeah. That's the other component of this. If this were a 12, 15-game slate, you could just say, screw it, I'm not going to play San Francisco. I don't think you want to do that today. They've got the second highest top stack score. It's a great bullpen to be targeting in general. It's just a question of like, when does Jock Peterson show up? When does, any number of these righties that might be showing up now or were earlier in the lineup, when could we see them get the rug pulled out from underneath them? Because you have Austin Slater from the right side. You've got Blake Sabel, who's sitting there from the left side. You've got who else would they possibly be bringing in? Yeah, those are your main three that I think probably show up in some capacity. Slater, Sabel, and Jock Peterson. You can't play that scenario out, though, enough times on a 5-game slate where San Francisco still shouldn't be in your player pool, even if you're making just 10 or 20 lineups.
So now let's get back talking about some of the pitchers. And you just brought up Hogan Harris. I had mentioned, or we mutually brought up Hogan Harris, talked about how he's not going to be the starter anymore. He's going to be the bulk reliever still. So I don't think it should change our outlook on him all that much. But now with that said, Hogan Harris currently projected for, let's see, what is the ownership on Hogan Harris? 18%. So he's expected to be a fairly popular cheap pitcher, actually the most popular cheap pitcher on the entire slate if you're going really cheap. So how do you feel about playing a cheap Hogan Harris? Are you going to be with the field, overweight, underweight? How are you approaching him?
I was a tiny bit over. I'm probably going to stay there. I doubt we see any kind of a crazy shift. I mean, I go back to the Nick Pivetta thing because him against Oakland, you don't know what that minute or what that innings allotment was going to be. He had been, he got up to 4 innings the game before it in Fenway. And then he gets ramped up to 5 and goes 13 Ks and you needed him to win a tournament at 10% ownership. That was just wild to me. I think that there was more uncertainty there. I do think you have to downgrade a Hogan Harris a tiny bit because we don't know what those innings could look like. But I'd be shocked if they went from, what is he going, 80, 74 pitches his last two after going 105. He went 4 2/3 in that outing against Detroit. I think he mainly got pulled because, well, he wasn't pitching well, gave up 7 earned, and was up to 105 pitches. But I would be shocked if he didn't go at least 75 pitches unless he gets completely shelled in this spot. The strikeout stuff isn't horrendous. We've seen at the AAA level, it's been fine. I do think that he's somebody just from a salary perspective that I have to be mixing in to lineups when I'm playing 100% Spencer Strider. So it's kind of a push and pull on what you're doing salary-wise with other spots in your lineup. And I don't think the opportunity cost of missing out on an Alex Wood, Marcus Stroman, Andrew Heaney, Jose Quintana, who I do like quite a bit considering he's 6% owned and there's positive leverage going his direction at 5,700. I probably prefer him the most over Hogan Harris in this range now. And maybe when I rerun things, I just get to all the Jose Quintana, but I do not mind Hogan Harris at all now.
Yeah, I'm curious too if this actually does lower his ownership in any kind of significant way, which it might just based on, immediately. Maybe. I see people in chat saying once Hogan Harris, it's announced that the A's are going to have an opener. I see people immediately go, don't play Hogan Harris. He's not the starter, which early in the day, sure, I thought he was going to be the starter. But two outings ago, he came out of the bullpen, pitched 4 innings, sucked in those 4 innings because he's still Hogan Harris. He's a 6.11 ERA this year, 4.43 FIP. So he's not the best pitcher in the world, but I still think he's a serviceable cheap pitcher. And he's likely the cheap pitcher looks like I'm going to end up getting the most exposure to. But you mentioned something interesting there on the low end. You said Jose Quintana, relative to ownership, is the cheap pitcher who you like to be contrarian with. So if you have the option Quintana, Alex Wood, obviously Alex Wood is the easier matchup there against the Oakland A's. But between these guys, Alex Wood, Quintana, who, if you're going contrarian at cheap, why is your guy going to be Quintana?
So we saw 77 pitches from him the first outing here coming off the IL. He's been out the entire season. Looked decent. We saw the ground ball rate, nice 9-to-4 ratio. I'm just going to talk about it from that perspective because I'm not going to talk about his ground ball rate after one game. But overall, it was nice to see 9 ground balls right out of the gate. Only the 3 strikeouts, not a great swinging strike rate. I think we're going to see him start to acclimate, and it could go very, very poorly against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. But I still think that there's enough talent there that 5,700, I mean, if this were a larger slate and you're trying to fit in a lot of expensive stacks rather than just like the one expensive stack we really have on today's slate, I think you would see this ownership come up and he would actually be a target. And I don't think it would be that crazy to be looking at him. I think part of what your issue is today is you have Strider, Valdez. You have Lance Lynn, who can generate a lot of swing and misses, although gives up crazy amounts of power, especially to lefties. Carlos Rodon, who name recognition Mets. Again, I don't understand the Rodon ownership and why we have negative leverage coming in on him and why everybody wants to chomp at the bit to play him. But we have 5,700 Jose Quintana, and this Yankees lineup without Aaron Judge, who sounds like is going to come back on Friday, I don't find them to be all that intimidating. I think this middle of the lineup is kind of gettable. If we could see a little bit of a spike in terms of strikeouts, he gives me access to some builds, Strider plus him, that other pitchers just don't.
And is there anything else that's really interesting to you at pitcher? And, it's only a 5-game slate. So, I'm playing 150 lineups, and somewhere for I'm going to have at least some exposure to all of these guys. But is there anything else that's really standing out about a pitcher's ownership, or you have any kind of significant stand on anybody?
Not a significant stand, but I am at 15% on Andrew Heaney going up against Houston, which doesn't feel good, but it's north of a 24% K rate on the season here. He gives up a lot of power. It's going to be a very, very iffy spot, but Andrew Heaney was a pitcher that, talk about historical pricing. We were paying $9K, $9,500 for, given he had a 35% K rate at times there with the Dodgers and just was a completely different pitcher than what we're seeing this season. But there's enough strikeout upside from time to time that when you start talking about a 5-game slate, looking at anybody with strikeout upside sub 7,700 underneath Lynn, he's the only guy that really jumps out for me in that kind of a perspective. And lastly, I am playing Brian Bayo. 1.1% ownership is pretty nuts on any 5-game slate, especially for a guy who's got north of a 55% ground ball rate and can generate a lot of those things that you need to survive against a lineup like the Braves. It's more for just the fact that he's 1% on this kind of a slate, more than I think that he's going to completely survive this Atlanta spot. But I like whenever you get a really low-owned pitcher, just like you talked about with Adam Wainwright on a short slate the other day. I think that has to apply to Brian Bayo, although much more difficult when you're talking about 9,100 for him as opposed to whatever Wainwright's tag was.
Yeah, and by the way, Wainwright ended up being serviceable on that slate. I think he might have been in some of the winning lineups.
Yeah,
he didn't pitch well. He just gave up a lot of hard contact to hitters. That was what ended up happening for Adam Wainwright in that start. A lot of variance happens in baseball, and you could have that happen sometimes. Guys could just hit balls really hard at fielders, and then when you get these small slates where if you have somebody who's cheap who scores 11 fantasy points and he's contrarian when the guy who's chalk goes out and maybe scores like 5 or 6 fantasy points, it'd be a pretty big leg up on the field. Any final thoughts you have on pitcher? If not, we could go ahead and look at the lineup generator.
We ran the gamut on it. I mean, you can talk about every single pitcher on a 5-game slate. I mean, Marcus Stroman, the Ks just aren't there for me. There's a tiny bit of positive leverage. If he shows up in some lineups, it's fine, but not my favorite. Alex Wood is a long reliever doing the exact same thing as we have on the other side with Hogan Harris now. He'll be the long reliever there. I don't really have any kind of a stand on him. Nearly a 5 ERA, nothing really all that pretty. I like the Quintana side. I think when considering 6% ownership on him, I expect him to be pitching over 80 pitches if all goes well here. And I think that that's enough for me to just click on him more than anybody else in this range now.
All right. So Jordan Klein, do us the honors of pulling up the MLB lineup generator. This is the cheapest tool we have over at Stokastic.com, but cheap doesn't mean bad. It is something that's been super popular. A lot of people have had big wins using the tools and data we have over at Stokastic.com. Now, also, I think we should shout out Shit My Money. Adam, did you see Adam's win yesterday?
Yeah, 100K. I was sweating it. I hit him up because I'm a nice person like that. Even if he wants me to drown and die in the Pacific Ocean, doesn't mean that I can't still be a supportive coworker.
Yeah, and that's the difference between a lot of us and Adam here. If Adam's at the top of a GPP, so by the way, we have a link below. It'll get you 50% off any package you sign up for the first time over at Stokastic.com, including the lineup generator. So if you sign up for the first time, you get access for less than $5. But look at Adam. Look at Adam right there. Big win from. Here's how you know somebody had a really big win. Everybody keeps referencing Adam won $100,000. He won $113,000. He made so much money, people are leaving off $13,000 off his winnings yesterday.
Yeah. Notice how I wasn't one of those people who said anything until you said it.
There we go. Adam, big money. So congrats
to
Adam.
Love it, my dude.
If you guys want to sign up for all the tools and data we have here over at Stokastic.com, link below, 50% off any package. The lineup generator we're about to break down for you right now. Super simple tool to use because it is going to build lineups for you. They can upload directly to DraftKings or FanDuel. And something else that we talk about here, another utilization for this is you could also hand build some lineups by simulating out some lineups, seeing what pops up, and then just picking and choosing some of the players that are popping up most frequently. And you can hand build some lineups built around those players and kind of build a really good core of those players. But let's start with DraftKings and small slate. So let's go all stack types, but then contrarian, Jordan. I want to go contrarian here and see what we're getting to. Are we going to be getting to Spencer Strider? Are we going to be getting to something else here? Let's see. Save some lineups, discard some, and we'll see what it is that ends up popping up. And I just had my run of lineups finish here. So let's see what came up for me. Yeah, pretty much the same as what I had before, by the way. So the only thing that changed with the updated lineups is instead of having 70% Strider, I have 63%. So still my most rostered player by a mile, but a little bit different there.
I had 95% of my last run, and so I just clicked the lock button. So now,
fair enough.
Yeah, it's just because I don't want to win anything and not have him in it, because then you know what happens? Twitter just eviscerates you. So we're not going to do that.
All right.
100%.
100% for Eric Lindquist. And like I said, 63.3% for me. Now, one thing that's kind of interesting here, we got the stack exposures up. So we're getting to a lot of the Giants and the Cubs. But if you go to the player exposures, 69%. So very similar Strider exposure that we got to in the lineup generator that I got running my lineups through the Sims here. So 60+% of Strider, best option on the entire slate in our data. Our most rostered player there. He's my most rostered player. No qualms at all about getting to a lot of Strider. But look at our second most rostered pitcher, Eric. A lot of Alex Wood.
Alex Wood.
That's surprising to you.
No, it's not at all, especially because it's Oakland. Alex Wood, he's been pretty bad this season. He's been very bad this season, but anytime that you're going to face Oakland in one of the best pitchers parks in baseball against lefties on this season, they haven't been as bad, 93 WRC plus, but there's no doubt that there's still going to be pronounced upside there. 23.4% K rate. That's, above average as well against Southpaws. And well, he avoids the 1 through 3 situation just as much as Hogan Harris does. And well, 4 through 9 don't even look like real life hitters when it comes to Oakland specifically. So Alex Wood getting 2 turns through the lineup. It's a really good spot still. So I understand he's also on the cheap end there. It's an easier click, I think, than a Hogan Harris now, especially knowing that Hogan Harris isn't officially starting. I have taken him down a tiny bit. But I'm with you where I think that ownership could come down and maybe I should be going the opposite direction.
Yeah, getting to a good amount of Alex Wood there. So interesting. So one thing that I do think makes Alex Wood at least somewhat appealing is he's also really contrarian. You very rarely get a pitcher that has a track record of being decent, that's cheap, and is going to be contrarian against the A's. You have to be wary of the pitch count. I wouldn't play him on a bigger slate, but I think he's worthwhile on at least a slate of this size where it's really tiny and, weird shit could happen. As for the lineups, a lot of Giants exposure. We're getting to a lot of Cubs exposure. Anything there that you really strongly disagree with?
Not at all. I mean, Lance Lynn, I think people know that I've been targeting him a lot. I'm going to be targeting him again today, especially because he's popular. I love the leverage that you're getting there. Ronald Acuna, 38%. Yeah, I think that makes sense as well as a one-off. He's a one-off that I'm still able to get to. Him and Matt Olson. Not too difficult to still find paths to get to those 2 lovely individuals against Bayo here. They're my 2 favorite hitters to get to from the Atlanta lineup if you can. And you can still make that work with Strider pretty easily. So I like what our data is doing. It looks pretty similar to what I'm doing. Shouldn't be surprising.
Keep scrolling down, Jordan. I want to look through where we're getting the really chalky pitchers on the slate, because this is probably the most contrarian pitching slate I've seen us come up with here, where our number 1 most rostered pitcher, Strider, the least popular of the pay-up options. Number 2, right there's Alex Wood, who's very contrarian on the low end. Then we got Andrew Heaney. We've got Carlos Rodon in the pool, but once again, underweight to the field on him. We're underweight to the field on Framber Valdez. And this is also really similar exposure to what I got in the Sims tool when it comes to pitchers. I mentioned it's similar with Strider, but same with these other guys like Rodon, Framber Valdez. I'm also right around 20% of these guys. So a lot of synchronicity between this and what I'm doing with my lineups, and the Giants and Cubs also 2 stacks that I like quite a bit today.
Synchronicity.
All right. FanDuel time. Let's see what we have over at FanDuel. See what kind of lineups we could build there. And one more time, I also want to remind you guys that we are sponsored by Boom Fantasy today. If you download the Boom Fantasy app using the link we have below and then sign up using the promo code Stochastic1, look at this free square available over at Boom Fantasy. Under 999.5 goals for Alex Morgan. And this is not like every Alex Morgan in the history of existence that's going to be playing soccer today. Only the one Alex Morgan from the Women's World Cup soccer team. As long as she scores less than 1,000 goals today, you got yourself a free square that's going to win over at Boom Fantasy. So make sure to take advantage of that. Now let's go check out FanDuel lineups. Same deal, Jordan. Let's do contrarian lineups and see what ends up coming up. I have a feeling we're going to be getting to a lot of similar stuff here. I think it's going to be a lot of Cubs. I think it's going to be a lot of Giants, but maybe I'll be wrong. I'm expecting Cubs, Giants, and Strider. Oh, Braves. Cubs, Giants, Braves. And let's see, still Strider.
Low, Strider.
Yeah, Strider, most rostered pitcher, popping up in about half of our lineups over on FanDuel, and a ton of Giants there. Wilmer Flores. It's like Michael Conforto, J.D. Davis, Lamont Wade. And then once you get past there, some Braves popping up, Ozzy Albies, Ronald Acuna, Austin Riley. Salary cap is basically fake on FanDuel. It's not an actual.
It's not a real place. It's not a real thing.
This is how soft the salary cap is over on FanDuel. You could play Strider today and still stack the Braves with him.
That's fun.
Do whatever you want. Just play whoever over there.
Yep, I'm good today. I'll stick to DK.
Anything else that you notice over here on FanDuel that looks different from DraftKings in any way that you want to point out?
Yeah, salary, not a thing. That looks very different. So you're kind of playing the best place. How about IKF hanging out there 27%? That's a pretty wild one to see there. Does he have a lot of multi-positional utility? Because he's 2.2K. I think that might just be what's happening. You're getting him as a one-off. Surrounded by the likes of the Braves, gives you access to everything there. I don't know if I love that, but again, I'm not playing over there. I haven't looked enough into it. Let's see. You got Casey Schmidt as a one-off as well. I mean, they're basically taking two really, really cheap one-offs and just rotating them around the Braves with Strider. It's kind of an interesting build, interesting way of putting it together. I would want to take a look and see. I would want to throw some stuff in Fantasy Cruncher. I would want to optimize by projection and see if other people were running into that same route of lineup. But if they weren't, obviously this would be a great path. Makes a lot of sense to me.
All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about the stacks then, Eric. And when it comes to the stacks today, we've got the ownership here going primarily to, surprise, surprise, the Atlanta Braves. Atlanta Braves currently projected for right around 15% ownership as a team. Typically this year, the Atlanta Braves, if they're chalky, they score 1 million runs. If they're less chalky, they score less runs than that. But the chalky Braves very rarely fail this year. I'm going to be underweight to the Braves. I don't feel great about it, but I think Brayan Bello is a much better pitcher than what he's getting credit for from the field here. I understand that the Braves have great top stack odds, but here's the issue that I have on the other side with Atlanta. They are really expensive, at least on Draft. FanDuel, pricing, like we said, doesn't matter. They're very easy to play over there. At least as far as DraftKings goes, I just find the price point making them a little bit difficult to get to, and you and I are prioritizing Strider. So what are you going to be doing with the Braves when they have the highest top stack odds for us, but are also really popular?
I have one out of 20 that is a 5-person Brave stack. I have some one-offs. I talked about it before. Acuna, getting to him, getting to Matt Olson, getting to some 2 and 3 mans, the likes of Rosario, Ozuna there in the middle of that lineup, Arcia as well showing up a little bit for me, but I don't want to be playing 5-man chalky, crazy amount of 5-mans, especially can't do it. You can't, it would require cheating to be able to play them on DraftKings alongside Strider and Valdez lineups, things of that nature. And Brayan Bello, yes, it is. I talked about this earlier today. 85 degrees. It's 47% humidity. It is blowing out a little bit there in Fenway as well. It is a difficult spot for Brayan Bello, but he has the kind of stuff where I think he can at least survive here and make stacking a little bit more difficult. He's got an 8% barrel percentage to league average, 55.8% ground ball rate, which is fantastic kind of stuff, and induces a lot of weak contact relative to what his 41.6% hard hit percentage is. If you look at his batted ball profile, 2.2% weak percentage, you're looking at a lot of dribblers from Brayan Bello that are easy outs, and that That for me is enough that I think I just want to be getting away from a chalky Brave stack in this kind of a spot against this kind of a pitcher and just take my shots across the entire board with everything else.
So with that being the case, do you have a stack you're getting to more than the rest of them? Or is it just like, hey, underweight to the Braves, which by the way, I'm very underweight to the Braves right now. And it's just price point, right? If just to reiterate, I know I said this a second ago, but if you and I want to be overweight to the field on Strider, as expensive as he is, you can go ahead, like you said, you have to be cheating to play Strider in 5-man Brave stacks. It's not doable within the salary cap, at least on DraftKings FanDuel. It's pretty easy to do. So is there one stack that you are preferring to all the other options today?
When you're the Mets, you're the Mets. Carlos Rodon is very popular. I have almost none of him. And by default, my single entry, because I did build out one of those by hand here as well. And then a team that it just seems is going undervalued. Optimizers aren't really getting to it, and they have positive leverage. And I do not... Carlos Rodon could just be not in good shape right now. I think that's very likely. We've at least seen 3 outings from Rodon as opposed to 1 from Quintana on the side of it. North of a 7 ERA, 1.43 whip, 4 homers through 3 outings. There are a lot of telltale signs, and maybe he turns it around here against the Mets. But you get a Ventos there in the 2-hole, 2,400, along with Alonso. Not fun. Obviously, all you FanDuel people don't have to worry about that. But Pham, Canna, McNeil, you got Ventos. These are cheap bats that make it very easy for me to get to Strider. Alvarez avoided any kind of a major injury. That was good to see there with his hand issue. Ends up in the lineup again today. 19 homers here on the season, sub 4K. Good catcher option. I love the Mets today.
Buck Showalter cannot be having a worse season managing. Did you see what he said after the game yesterday?
I did not.
He said, based on the body language and like the spirit of Alvarez, he could tell it was a serious injury.
And now he's in the lineup today with x-rays coming back negative.
Yes.
What a fucking dipshit.
Yeah. It's been a rough year for Buck Showalter. Remember also a couple weeks ago, the Mets were on something like a 7-game losing streak. This actually was probably a little further away, like 6 weeks ago. And Buck Showalter said that he's very proud of his team. And it was when they're in the midst of like their longest losing streak of the year. So yeah, rough season for him. I'm on the same page as you, by the way. My 2 most rostered stacks as of right now. Number 1, Chicago Cubs. Number 2 is the New York Mets.
Those are my 2 highest.
And a couple of reasons why. The main being, though, is just the ownership of Lance Lynn and Carlos Rodon, and the fact these are 2 blow-up-prone pitchers. I think a lot of people know by now the way I play MLB DFS. If a chalky pitcher has the ability, I should say, is prone to really getting blown up. They're prone to giving up home runs. They're prone to giving up really wayward innings at times. That's what Lance Lynn and Carlos Rodon are. So I think these are 2 guys who there's certainly upside to them. I understand why the field is getting there. Carlos Rodon because of his previous history being an elite pitcher, and then Lance Lynn also because he has a lot of strikeout upside. But there's for sure downside in these pitchers, and there's a lot of leverage to be had by stacking against them. So Cubs and Mets, those are my 2 favorite stacks from the entire slate. And it seems like you are on the same page as me.
Look at us go. It's adorable. 3rd for me, Houston. And then San Francisco was there. I think there's some extra risk there, knowing that Hogan Harris isn't going to be going 4 innings right out of the gate. So I am treading lightly, as Walter White would say, with the San Francisco Giants at this point.
I've been trying to get my dad to watch Breaking Bad for forever. I forget what year it ended, like 2013 or something.
Yeah. It's right around there, 13, 14, yeah.
Just had no interest. I finally convinced him to watch one. He watched the entire series in less than a week. It was one of the most
Scuba. Dude, I think my wife did about the same thing. I'd been trying to get her to watch it forever. And she's like, I don't really like meth. And like, I don't know. It's like a creepy old teacher guy and his student. Like, what are we? I'm like, whoever explained this to you explained this very, very poorly to you. And then like I found her going through the house going, oh yeah, ah! Imitating the first villain from it, the guy,
Tuco.
Oh,
Tuco.
Yeah. Thank you, Tuco. Yeah, so good. And she'd just like randomly start doing that throughout the house. I'm like, I got a convert. Yeah, I converted her. It was good.
I honestly don't think it's possible to watch that show and not enjoy it.
Some people are just broken and can't take joy from great things. So I know those people exist, but they're also just go to therapy instead. Just figure your shit out.
These people, what's their favorite TV show? Big
whatever
Bang Theory
people don't
and
like.
How I Met Your Mother or something.
Yeah, it would be like, what's a show that people don't like that?
So I'm just thinking of like popular shows that I kind of think suck. Like any of those shows with a laugh track.
Yeah.
If you took the laugh track away, like Big Bang Theory, you wouldn't even know where the jokes are supposed to be. Like that's how far off their taste has to be to not enjoy Breaking Bad.
I don't mind Big Bang Theory that much, but yeah, I'm with you where it might be a little bit overrated. It might be a little bit overrated by the people.
All right. So I've got my lineups picked out here, and yeah, Cubs, Mets. I'm still getting to Giant stacks here, but other teams that I definitely like getting to as well. Braves, I ended up with a final exposure of 6% of the Atlanta Braves. So they're in there, but I've got like a third of what the field has as far as the Braves go. Are there any crazy contrarian stacks that you find yourself really gravitating towards or being well overweight to?
Oakland, that's stupid. But they're really low owned and they're cheap, and I'm playing a lot of Strider. So, I mean, I think what's happening is just because of what my uncertainty, my overall uncomfortability with San Francisco and what they're going to end up doing with some of these pieces. Now, there's only 8 players you can roster from San Francisco today in their lineup, but I just find it a little bit easier to talk myself into playing some Oakland bats that I know are just going to stay out there the whole time. It's such a bad lineup. But as you said before, Alex Wood, he was popping there for us in terms of what we had going there in the Sims tool. And 17.7%, he's higher owned than Heaney, Harris, Bayo, Quintana. I'm getting to more Quintana. I'm getting to just about the same amount of Heaney as I am Wood. And Hogan Harris, I'm a little bit under to at that point in time, but right around the field now at 12%. I don't know. Alex Wood is pulling a lot of ownership for the bottom end of the spectrum here, sub 7,700. So I think Oakland's still a pretty decent spot, although it never feels good to be rostering Oakland.
And Einstein in the Discord chat wants to know what we make of the Houston Astros now that their lineup is fully healthy, which is true. Jose Altuve back in the mix. Yordan Alvarez back in the mix. It's kind of funny. A couple things happen here with them being back. Number one, obviously the offense is better. Here's the other side of it, though, and why I'm not ultimately massively different from the field. They become a lot more expensive now. And considering some of the pitchers we like a Strider, I ended up with, let's see, where do I have?
I just bet Houston and I bet Yordan Alvarez. And then that line moved a little bit more in my favor. Was like minus 160, minus 155 earlier today or whatever it was. And now it's like minus 175, minus 180. I'm not sure what it's at now. But I know that Yordan Alvarez batting 5th there, 596 expected slugging, 420 xWOBA, has really no reverse, no issues against lefties. I'm interested against Andrew Heaney, so bet him at plus 350 and then just, do other stuff.
I only have 3.3% Astro stacks, and I really do love this offense now. It just doesn't really fit in with the pitchers I'm looking to play today. So unfortunately, doesn't quite make the cut. Great upside for them against Andrew Heaney. It's just I can't really play everything, and I'm gravitating away from those expensive offenses to play some of the more expensive pitchers, Spencer Strider most notably. So only 3.3% Astro stacks for me on this slate. Let's see if we have any other questions in the Discord. We do not right now. As for some of my other offense exposure, another team that I'm getting some of here is where was it? Oh, so I'm also playing a little bit of the Boston Red Sox, very small amount, but I do have them in 5% of my lineups. So one thing that kind of stands out to me, though, and I'm underweight to the field on Boston. Are you surprised how popular they are today? They're projected for 10% ownership against Spencer Strider. So like I said, they popped up in some of my lineups, but I was kind of stunned to see the final ownership be as popular as it is. This is the 5th most popular offense on the entire slate going up against Strider. Why do you think it is that the field is getting to the Red Sox at that kind of rate? Yeah, that's how I feel as well.
Dodgers working on a trade to acquire Ahmed Rosario. Interesting. Maybe better than Miguel Rojas and Yeiner Hernandez and all these other insane things that they've been trying to make work. I guess they just went and got Kiki. Do you love me? Or are you riding? But he can play outfield, second base, shortstop. They've played him everywhere over the course of his years in LA. So Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, but I just shrug. I don't know why everybody wants to play Boston here. It's upside, but I have 0 Boston bats. That shouldn't be surprising considering I have 100% Spencer Strider. So that is one team that you will not expect if they go off for me to win anything with.
How crazy would I be if I played Brian Bayo in my single entry lineup today?
Not crazy at all. I think Brian Bayo is by far the best in terms of leverage out of any pitcher on this entire slate, and it's not remotely close. I don't know how many times I've talked about him on this show, and he's made me actually feel smart about myself because I get that the Ks aren't there in a pronounced way. He had big time K upside coming into the bigs. We were waiting for it. Didn't really show out, but there's so many games where he gets to 6 2/3, 7 innings pitched, and just racks up a crazy amount of fantasy points just by being efficient, by inducing tons of ground balls. In fact, he's had double-digit ground balls. Well, I guess his last game he didn't. But before that, he had 6 consecutive games with double-digit ground balls and at least 5 strikeouts. Like there's a crazy amount of upside with a Brian Bayo at 1% on a 5-game slate. It's just a little bit wild to me.
I might be the only person who plays him in single entry today. It'll be like this morning also when I was the only person who stacked the Seattle Mariners. I'll be the only one who plays Brian Bayo today. Will it go poorly? Most likely, but maybe not. So
Strider can blow up in Fenway. You know what's interesting is that lefty power doesn't actually play up in Fenway, and you would think it would because Pesky pulls out there like 320 to right. Like it juts out in such a pronounced way, and David Ortiz has distorted my common sense knowledge of what I understand about Fenway so much because we've seen him hit a bazillion home runs out to right there. Rip, one of the Twins greats, but David Ortiz distorts my understanding of that park because it's actually much better for righties overall. So very strange, but just kind of what it is. Boston's lineup, they continue to overachieve. You know, it's a lot of lefties going up against Strider too. There's definitely a case to be made for it, but I'm just firmly on the Strider side considering the positive leverage.
So just uploaded my lineup, my lineups, I should say. Playing 150, but my single entry lineup is a 5-man Cub stack, and the pitchers are Spencer Strider and Brian Bayo. So I ended up rolling with it. By the way, old friend here. I shouldn't say old friend because I talk to him just about every day. But Nick, if you guys heard my phone ring about 15 minutes ago, that was Nick trying to call me. And now he's left a super chat here. He says, Greg, sorry to call during the show, off topic, and a quick question. Even with Stroman's recent struggles, why the -110 line for the Cubs? So Eric, I know that you do your breakdown of all of the games. Do you like the Cubs side of the game today? It was funny. I know yesterday you and Nick had a little back and forth on Twitter. You both ended up being right because you had said that you thought the Twins could end up getting to George Kirby. And we had Nick say that he thought that he was going to get a lot of strikeouts. And we were 2 innings into the game. The Twins put a bunch of runs up on the board. He had 6 strikeouts already. So both of you guys came out looking pretty good there.
Yeah, go us. Yeah, calling Matt Wallner on back-to-back days on a video. That's always a wild thing. You call a guy's 2nd and 3rd home runs of the season, but it showed up in AAA. I'm glad that we're starting to see it now in the bigs. Alex Kirilloff, another guy, late bloomer here, starting to show what he's capable of as well. But glad to see that he was able to cash that over 5.5 Ks ticket. The main reason is Lance Lynn is about as unpredictable as it gets. You look at the overall WRC plus of today's respective lineups. There's no doubt that the Cubs have the better lineup overall, top to bottom. You're having one of the worst seasons ever for the likes of a Tim Anderson. Even though there is power for a guy like Jake Berger and a 506 expected slugging, it comes with a 33% K rate. Right on right, Marcus Stroman been really neutralizing and locking up those guys. It's just a drastic difference in terms of styles of what you've got in terms of like the makeshift lineup here for the White Sox every single day. And then a strikeout pitcher in Lance Lynn who gives up crazy amounts of lefty power. So I think this line is overall pretty damn efficient.
I like the Cubs side of this. And also, I mean, my DFS lineups are going to align with this, right? I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Lance Lynn. And then the Cubs are my most stacked team of the entire day. I'm playing them in single entry today as well. I'm on the Cubs side of this game. I like the Cubs. So Nick, I have no issues at all with -110 there for the
That's
Cubs.
Where I would lean. I definitely would be leaning that direction. But in terms of betting, obviously from a DFS perspective, you also have to think about salary. You have to think about ownership. You have to think about a lot of things that when it comes to a betting line, I simply plug it in and I try to figure out what's the break even point. And do I agree with the line or do I not? I would have the break-even point right around minus 105 for this. We're talking if it would be plus 105, minus 105 if we're just talking about what we're talking about for an implied percentage, so like 54%. At minus 110, not worth the squeeze for me, but I totally understand being on the Cubs side if you have to pick a side.
Yeah, Cubs for me as well. And now we're right around at lock, Eric. So really quick, dong pick of the day. What are you looking at as far as
Yordan Alvarez, left on left against Andrew Heaney? I'm going to call Oppo Taco Crawford boxes second at bat for Yordan Alvarez.
I am going to be calling for a home run for Wilmer Flores off of Hogan Harris. So I don't think he homers off of the opener. I think once Hogan Harris comes in, Wilmer Flores ends up hitting the long ones today. So Wilmer Flores, my home run call. You went with Yordan Alvarez, and I know in the past you've made fun of me for picking Kyle Schwarber, and you're going to pick Yordan Alvarez. Shame on you, Eric.
Left on left, bro. Left on left. I'm allowed.
Shame on you. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our podcast network. If you guys are ever missing one of our shows, want to listen to it in the car, while you're at work, on the go, check out Stochastic Daily Fantasy Podcast Network. Leave us a 5-star review while you're there as well. We do really appreciate it. Thank you guys very much for watching. Good luck with all your lineups. See you back here tomorrow.